Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and this is a full series breakdown compilation of Star Wars Rebels Season 1, Season 2, Season 3, and Season 4. The full series, originally on Disney XD from 2014 to 2018, now streaming on Disney Plus, and required viewing for every new Star Wars live-action series, it seems. What you are watching here is an extended compilation video of the 4 separate Rebels breakdowns that we already released on the New Rockstars channel, and we are re-releasing them here as this one mega compiled video podcast of sorts at the request of viewers who preferred watching this recap series that way, without having to figure out playlists or hunt down video after video. So if you already watched those 4 videos, thank you so much. You're welcome to watch this one as well, but we just wanted to have a place for the marathon bingers to have it their way. Don't worry, New Rockstars is not going to become like a re-upload channel. This is just going to be something that we do every once in a while when it makes sense to do it. And at the end of this breakdown compilation, I'm going to share my list of which Rebels episodes I think are must-watches if you only have time to watch like a season's worth of episodes, as well as my ranking of the top 5 best Rebels episodes. We should have a video chapter down below that you can click to if you just want to skip right to that portion. But for everyone else, here we go. Enjoy past me breaking down all 4 seasons of Rebels for you. Season 1, Episode 1 and 2, Spark of the Rebellion, Parts 1 and 2. This 2-part series premiere opens on the triangular hulls of 3 Imperial Star Destroyers, looking like sharp teeth of the jaws of a beast, chomping down on the stars, devouring the galaxy. George Lucas's opening shot for A New Hope was also a Star Destroyer bearing down on us, and that's where this Rebel series wants to put us emotionally. James Earl Jones returns to voice Darth Vader, whose mask we see in a massive screen-encompassing hologram.
The Jedi Knights are all but destroyed, and yet your task is not complete, Inquisitor.
And the bald head positioned right in Vader's breathing vent, breathing down on his shoulders and his head, is that of the Inquisitor, or the Grand Inquisitor, voiced by Jason Isaacs. The Utapawan race seen in Revenge of the Sith. In the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, he was played by Rupert Friend, but they really didn't do enough to stretch out his face. While he would go on to be known as the Grand Inquisitor, at first in this Rebels series, the character was known as just the Inquisitor. Originally, Rebels wasn't going to have Darth Vader at all, but they decided to add this prologue and the epilogue of the series for context and Star Wars-ness. Lucasfilm released Rebels in October 2014 on Disney XD, after Clone Wars was discontinued on the Cartoon Network in 2013 with an unfinished Season 6 arc moved to Netflix. Rebels would center around all new characters and be set in 5 BBY, that's 5 years before A New Hope, and about 14 years after Revenge of the Sith. Over the course of this series, it would progress ahead to right before A New Hope. Ezra Bridger, the hero really of this series, voiced by Taylor Gray, looks out from a tower on the Outer Rim world of Lothal. This backdrop is kind of Ezra's binary sunset. It returns throughout the series, specifically in the final shot of the series, and we'll see it in the Ahsoka series. And Ahsoka, the character, will be played by Iman Esfandi. Ezra's view of the Star Destroyer blasts the Imperial March. Yes, really all of John Williams' themes just come back throughout this series, so I'm not going to be pointing out every instance, nor will I point out like every species, every ship, every droid, every little bit of random Orbesh. I'm really just going to focus on the major stuff that you need to know for the other titles and the really cool Easter eggs that I don't really think anyone else has pointed out before. So Lothal is currently under Imperial occupation, and so we see all over the place propaganda like this mural with Orbesh text. Support your empire, build TIE fighters, the latest in defense against threats to peace. Sign our fleet systems, bringing jobs and prosperity to Lothal. This is really what Lothal is currently used for by the Empire. Signar Fleet Systems, the company that builds TIE fighters. Later, Thrawn will use Lothal, and had he been successful in that operation, the Empire might not have lost this civil war. Ezra, who's Force sensitive, senses his future master, Kanan Jarrus, voiced by Freddie Prinze Jr.
That was weird.
Yeah, I love this sound effect of Ezra sensing the Force, and it's presented as kind of a force of nature here, almost like a whale call. In the hyperspace whales, the Purrgil will play a very important role in Ezra's destiny, and will appear in the Ahsoka series. Kanan Jarrus is the alias of the former Jedi Caleb Dume, apprentice to Depa Billaba, and their tragic Order 66 moment was depicted in the very first episode of the Bad Batch series. Also in his crew, here in the streets of Lothal, is Zeb Aurelios, the Lasat voiced by Steve Blum, who also showed up in live action with incredible VFX in The Mandalorian Season 3, and the Mandalorian character Sabine Wren, voiced in this series by Tia Sircar, who is played in Ahsoka by Natasha Louis Bordizzo. Sabine is quite the artist. Her armor features the Mandalorian starboard symbol, the Orbesh number 5 for her codename being Spectre 5, and a Night Owl style helmet, the same kind of style worn by Bo-Katan. Ezra interrupts these rebels' mission to steal blasters, leading to this chase through the Lothal streets and down the highway. They get scooped up by the Ghost, a VCX 100 light freighter captained by Twi'lek Hera Syndulla, voiced by Vanesh Marshall in this show and played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead in Ahsoka, and their astromech droid is Chopper, voiced by Dave Filoni himself. And as we'll see in pretty much every episode of the series, Chopper is just kind of a jerk. He's always picking fights and committing more crimes. Ezra finds a lightsaber in Jedi holocron that has a message to all Jedi from Obi-Wan Kenobi right after the Purge, and Obi-Wan here is voiced by James Arnold Taylor, doing a pretty solid impression of Ewan McGregor.
This is Master Obi-Wan Kenobi. I regret to report that both our Jedi Order and the Republic have fallen.
But it's interesting how in this two-part premiere, we only hear the first half of it here. We don't get the full message of hope just yet. Now these blasters are sold to crime lord Vizago in exchange for food and info about Wookiee prisoners. The Ghost crew tries to pull the old Wookiee prisoner con that Han and Chewie pulled in A New Hope, except Kanan and Sabine pretend that Zeb is a rare hairless Wookiee.
Haven't you ever seen a rare hairless Wookiee before?
It's all a trap though, and Ezra gets captured by Agent Kallus, voiced by the amazing actor David Oyelowo. The crew goes back for Ezra, who had overheard where the Wookiee prisoners are because he's such a crafty thief and voice impersonator on stolen radio comms. So the Wookiees are being sent into slave labor in the spice mines on the planet Kessel, of Kessel Run fame, and would be shown a few years later in live action in the Solo film. They free these Wookiees, and Kanan reveals his Jedi skills. We get a little Wilhelm scream when Ezra rescues a Wookiee kid. And Kanan offers to train Ezra in the ways of the Force, and we hear the rest of Obi-Wan's hopeful message, and how it's not just a warning, it's a message of hope and advice on how to move forward from this.
Our future is uncertain. We will each be challenged. Our trust, our faith, our friendships, and in time, a new hope will emerge.
Ah, A New Hope. It's the name of the movie! Okay, episode 3, Droids in Distress. The Ghost crew plots to steal ion disruptors from Minister Maketh Tua. Now, Tua is a character that appears in the Thrawn novel and in a few Star Wars comics, R2-D2 and C-3PO cameo. So folks, season 1 of Rebels, an attempt to win over Star Wars fans, often just plugged in random faces from the OT. But my favorite cameo here is a droid piloting this Gorel transport, RX-24, voiced by the wonderful Paul Rubens, who we just lost.
I am sorry, sir. Your astromech must proceed to the back of the craft.
Rubens is an important voice to Star Wars history. He provided the voice of R3X or Rex from the original Star Tours ride at Disneyland, and R3X now serves as a DJ at Oga's Cantina in Galaxy's Edge. 3PO and R2 translate for Tua, and they end up on board the Ghost. We learn the ion disruptors are the weapons that wiped out most of Zeb's people, the Lasat. So he's wary about this deal, but Kallus shows up during their meeting with Vizago and taunts Zeb with a bow rifle that he says he took off a Lasat, and he says that he's the one who gave the order to use those ion disruptors on them all, and Zeb loses it. And while Zeb's about to lose his fight, Ezra force pushes Kallus away from Zeb, and the crew returns the protocol and astromech droids to their owner, Senator Bail Organa. The final shot of this episode mirrors Leia recording her message to Obi-Wan on R2 in A New Hope. Okay, episode 4, Fighter Flight. Ezra and Zeb, after some squabbling, go on a Melu run. The Melu Run fruit come back throughout live action Star Wars titles. Dave Filoni loves these, and you can actually get a drink based on the Melu Run at Galaxy's Edge. It's so good. Yeah, this episode is kind of all about the fruit. The fruit really is one of the simple joys of being a rebel, folks. And the shopping list that Hera gives them includes science dip, space waffles, large bag, writing cam, and dill pickles. Ezra runs into family friend Morad Sumar, and Zeb and Ezra find a crate of Melu Run, and Ezra gets caught stealing one of them. They escape in a TIE fighter, while Hera and Kanan hang out back on the Ghost playing holo chess. Zeb and Ezra chase down the prisoner convoy in the TIE.
That's not the tie you're looking for.
Yeah, Zeb's trying to pull off some classic Jedi mind tricks the way Ezra has been scratching the surface of using the Force these first 4 episodes. This Imperial troop transport we see is actually based on a classic Star Wars toy, where the people kind of plug into the sides of it. And we see how Sabine graffitied a mural of Zeb and Ezra and Chopper. She is such a talented artist, something that will come back in the final scene of the series. Throughout the show, you do get shots of her room that includes characters that look a lot like Cad Bane and Embo from Clone Wars. Episode 5, Rise of the Old Masters. So this is an important episode. Please watch this one if you can. It's really good. Kanan trains Ezra using the same methods that Yoda uses with Luke Skywalker in Empire. The one-armed handstand and this line.
Do or do not. There is no try.
What does that even mean?
So these Yoda anecdotes will be important to Ezra since he later communes with the Jedi Master, and this episode explores really the deeper meaning of that quote from Empire, which I think often goes misunderstood. Because I think people think that if you can't actually accomplish something, you shouldn't even try. That's not really what it means. It really means begin with the end in mind, see your target, actualize it, believe in yourself, and set your target on the destination. Don't prematurely commit yourself to a half measure. Ezra nearly falls to his freaking death from this training, and Pitching Machine Chopper fires another bottle at Ezra that lands dragons and a lothcat. And these fuzzballs are beloved creatures that Filoni loves to bring back in live action. I'm sure we're gonna see quite a few lothcats in Ahsoka. The Imperial News Channel gets hijacked by the anti-Empire senator in exile Travis, voiced by Brent Spiner from Star Trek The Next Generation. Spy Master Luminara Unduli is apparently imprisoned in the Spire. Now, Luminara Unduli first appeared in Attack of the Clones, and she showed up in Clone Wars as the master of Barriss Offee, the young Jedi who framed Ahsoka Tano for the bombing of the Jedi Temple, which led to Ahsoka leaving the Jedi Order. The Spire, meanwhile, is where Maul was actually held in the comic Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir, where he was imprisoned by Darth Sidious in the part of the timeline that's set after Clone Wars Season 5. Kanan and Ezra make it to Unduli's cell and realize that it's not actually her, it's a corpse, and the Grand Inquisitor was using her essence to lure in the Jedi. As Kanan and the Inquisitor duel, the Inquisitor taunts him.
Close quarter fighting. Bilaba's emphasis was always on Form 3, which you favor to a ridiculous degree. Clearly, you were a poor student.
Now, this Inquisitor used to be a Jedi Temple guard, and he was there for the trials of Ahsoka and Barriss in that Clone Wars arc. And he mentions Form 3, there are 7 total forms of lightsaber combat, and Form 3 is the most offensive one. And this is also the first time we see the Inquisitor's rotating double-bladed lightsaber put to use. Filoni introduced these as kind of a step up from Maul's double-sided saber in Phantom Menace. This one spins. They escape with the help of Hera and some horny Tibbities. The Tibbities got their name from the abbreviation TBD, or to be determined. The production team was using TBD as a placeholder name, and they decided to just go with it, which is kind of how a lot of stuff in Star Wars works. Kanan discovers a new understanding of Yoda's quote.
I'm not gonna try to teach you anymore. If all I do is try, that means I don't truly believe I can succeed. So from now on, I will teach you. Look, I may fail, you may fail, but there is no try.
So this wisdom is as much for the teacher as it is for the student. As Yoda will later explain in The Last Jedi, which I think is my favorite quote from the sequel trilogy.
Failure also, yes, failure most of all. The greatest teacher failure is. We are what they grow beyond. That is the true burden of all masters.
So really, Yoda's wisdom is the rise of the old masters in this episode's title. Okay, episode 6, Breaking Ranks. Ezra goes undercover at an Imperial Academy, posing as a cadet named Dev Morgan to steal a key card to stop a shipment of Kyber crystals, which power lightsabers and eventually power the Death Star, which is why at the end of this episode, the transport explodes, releasing a wild green shockwave. Ezra and the other cadets are tested using this well. Its design is inspired by Clone Wars episodes with the clone troopers, clone cadets, and the box. The clone troopers have all since been decommissioned, excluding the Bad Batch, some of whom are still alive at this point in the timeline, as well as Rex, whom we'll meet in future seasons of Rebels, and I guess that homeless one that Obi-Wan ran into in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, but they've all been replaced with Imperial recruits in the form of stormtroopers, and this is how they're trained. Ezra gets Callus's key card to the Ghost crew, but he stays behind to break out his friends, Jai Kell and Zara Leonis, who's actually also undercover trying to find his sister Dara, who went missing from the Academy. The Grand Inquisitor is coming the next day to take custody of Ezra and Jai, and the three fight their way out of the Academy in an AT-ST with the help of the Ghost crew, but Zara decides to stay behind to continue the search for his sister, and he faces the Grand Inquisitor's questioning. Episode 7, Out of Darkness. So the Phantom, which is a small ship attached to the Ghost, gets damaged in this episode. Zeb fails to notice a leak. So Hera and Sabine take the Phantom to collect supplies from a contact named Fulcrum on Fort Anaxis, which is an abandoned asteroid base, and Anaxis will later be revisited in the Bad Batch arc of Clone Wars Season 7, which is set years before this when the base was still active during the Clone Wars and their fight against the droid army, the Separatists. Hera and Sabine find Fulcrum's crates marked with the Fulcrum symbol, which, yes, does look a bit like a certain Togruta's head. More on that later, of course. But Anaxis is infested with Furnox, which are deadly and sunlight averse. With an asteroid about to block out the sun and the Phantom out of fuel, Hera and Sabine have to use the explosive Rhydonium to hold them off. Rhydonium was actually seen in the Season 5 Abafar episodes of Clone Wars. In this episode, we also finally get to see some space waffles, which were on Hera's shopping list in episode 4. Galaxy's Edge needs these on the menu. Okay, episode 8, Empire Day. Kanan trains Ezra to use the Force to connect with a Lothcat, but Ezra can't focus because it's Empire Day, celebrating the founding of the Empire 15 years ago. We also find out that it's the same day as Ezra's birthday. He turned 15. He was born the day the Empire was founded. And 8 years ago is when the Empire took his parents, Ephraim and Mira. He hasn't seen them since. He's an orphan, kind of like Aladdin. We see the Imperial HoloNet broadcast, which I am fascinated by. We get a look at Palpatine, and this image in the broadcast is from his younger days, before he became, a hunched raisin that shoots lightning, showing how really Imperial propaganda is hiding his true appearance. I like the Aurebesh ticker here. It translates to residents attacked by herd of rabid lothcats, tragedy at Boo Boo Barn. Also, part of this propaganda is the music. On this broadcast, which also we hear during the parade, an upbeat version of the Imperial March by composer Kevin Kleiner. So this music is something that exists in universe for the characters. We also heard this Imperial propaganda music in Solo. The Ghost crew throw grenades that turn out to be fireworks diversions. Later, when the 2 Death Stars blow up in the original timeline, those explosions are kind of celebrated as literal fireworks in the sky. Tua and Oresco show off the new Sinar TIE Advanced V1. The Rebels blow it up. Ezra takes them to his old house where they find Sibo, that's the missing Rodian of this episode. The Empire put tech in his head that's given him access to schematics, battle plans, including AT-ATs or AT-ATs, TIE interceptors, and Sabine mentions an encrypted file talking about a 5-year plan for Outer Rim planets, which might refer to Project Stardust. That's a plan to build the Death Star, because about 5 years from now is when that will go online. They get Sibo off the planet, and he reveals he knows what happens to Ezra's parents. To be continued. And we pick up from there at episode 9, Gathering Forces. When TIE fighters are now chasing the Ghost, and Sibo tells Ezra that troopers took his parents away, he was too afraid to stop them or to help raise Ezra, and Ezra is pissed. The Inquisitor has attached an XX-23 S-Thread tracker to the Phantom right before the Ghost jumps to hyperspace. The S-Thread tracker was first introduced in Kraken's Rebel Field Guide, which is a 1991 Star Wars RPG guidebook. Sibo knows there's a tracker on board though, and Kanan and Ezra detach the Phantom mid-hyperspace to misdirect the Inquisitor. And they take the Phantom to an Axis, where Ezra tries to connect with the Fearnox using the Force, an animal taming ability that Star Wars titles have been exploring more and more, like Grogu with the Rancor. Ezra admits that he's not afraid of the Fearnox, he's afraid of not knowing the truth about his parents. So he forgives Sibo and he tames these beasts who look at Ezra in a way I'm always trying to get my dog Darla to do with me, but she won't. The Fearnox occupy the Stormtroopers while the Grand Inquisitor fights Kanan, gives them the business. Ezra unsummons the Alpha Fearnox using some dark side of the Force powers. They manage to escape, but keep this in mind. Ezra's dark side affinity just becomes increasingly important throughout the series, but this episode ends with Sabine giving us a bit of hope, restoring an image of Ezra with his parents. Episode 10, Path of the Jedi, another important one. Kanan brings Ezra to a hidden Jedi temple on Lothal after that dark side of the Force incident. The temple demands both Master and Padawan open it together, but once they're inside, Ezra must face the challenges alone. In a way, he kind of has to save his master. It's actually kind of similar to Luke Skywalker's cave quest in Empire Strikes Back, or Rey in that cave in Ahch-To in The Last Jedi. Like Luke and Rey, Ezra faces his worst fears and his insecurities. A vision of Kanan killed by the Inquisitor, and then the Ghost crew talking some major shit about him. The Inquisitor slaughters them too, but Ezra manages to snap himself out of it, to make it through the first few challenges, and he hears Yoda's voice, once again voiced by Frank Oz.
Big fears have you faced, young one.
Who are you?
A guide.
Yoda also guides Kanan's insecurities as a master, because it's as important to teach the master. Yoda is in exile on Dagobah at this point in history, so it's just kind of nice to hear that he mentally calls out to so many Jedi survivors scattered across the galaxy during this point in history. In the temple, we see etchings on the walls. These were actually inspired by Ralph McQuarrie's illustration in the Illustrated Star Wars universe from 1995, and it seems like we'll learn more about these kinds of etchings in Ahsoka. Ezra acquires a Kyber crystal for his future lightsaber, and when Ezra asks Kanan if they should use the temple as a base, Kanan just says,
I know what's in there. The past.
The past, because he knows the Jedi already tried to use the Jedi Temple as a sanctuary, the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, the one that was purged. And Obi-Wan explained in his message, the Jedi are now on a new path. They are homeless nomads. Episode 11, Idiot's Array. It's the Lando episode. Billy D. Williams returns to voice the famous smuggler, beating Zeb in a game of sabacc, and winning Chopper.
Name's Calrissian, Lando Calrissian. Now please, introduce me to my new droid.
His winning hand is Idiot's Array. It's a winning hand in the game of sabacc. The rules of the game were detailed in the Lando novel from 1983. The crew joins Lando on a smuggling run, and they meet as Morgan, voiced by the great James Hong, who recently appeared in Everything Everywhere All at Once. His design was inspired by an early Ralph McQuarrie design for Jabba the Hutt, actually.
I have what you ordered. What do you have to offer in return?
Lando offers Hera to as Morgan, but it's part of his supposed plan to get a puffer pig who can detect precious minerals and puffs up when it gets scared. Hera does manage to escape and makes it back to the Ghost, where she punches Lando for using her. The Ghost gets past the Imperial blockade and returns to Lothal, whereas Morgan waits for them. There's a big shootout, and Ezra reveals his new lightsaber, but it's also a blaster gun, which, you know, every lightsaber should have that functionality. They drive as Morgan off, and they leave Lando behind with his piggy. Episode 12, Vision of Hope. So Ezra has a vision of Senator in exile Tre Travis, including the crew helping Travis hide, and Travis mentioning Ezra's parents, which matches up with Travis's conveniently timed coded broadcast that he is actually headed to Lothal, so they think they must meet up with him. Ezra meets up with Zare, who says that Kallus gathered troops at the old Senate building, and the rebels try to warn Travis that Kallus is setting up a trap, but Kallus and Tua are one step ahead of them with intel on all of the rebels. They escape into the sewers with Travis, who reveals himself to be an Imperial spy. Son of a bitch! He used those transmissions to smoke out rebel sympathizers. Senator B. Travis also tells Ezra that his parents are long dead.
Your parents were very brave and very foolish. Where are they now? I'll tell you, my boy. They're gone!
Asshole. But good news is Hera suspected Travis was sus and she punched him after giving him a dud blaster. So they escape Kallus and the stormtroopers, and Ezra, through the blades of that fan, throws one epic death stare back at Travis before he takes off. Episode 13, Call to Action. So the Inquisitor, Antua, and Kallus greet Grand Moff Tarkin on Lothal. So Tarkin asks why the rebels keep making gains. In Clone Wars, Tarkin was still just an admiral, but Bad Batch kind of shows them in that transition from then to now. Here we see him wearing armor similar to what General Veers wore in Empire Strikes Back. Travis outs the Ghost crew to the public with the reward for their capture, so they can't hide in plain sight anymore. Maybe you should change your armor, Sabine. And Kanan plans to send a message hijacking an Imperial broadcast from a communication tower on Lothal. But Tarkin allows the Inquisitor to execute Oresco and Grint, Tarkin facing away from them, underlining this really is a message to Tua and Kallus to get their shit together. Ezra finally connects to a Lothcat to clear a probe droid, but they end up getting recorded by the playback. The Inquisitor ambushes them at the tower, capturing Kanan, but Ezra manages to transmit an inspiring call to action.
Stand up together.
Because that's when we're strongest.
And although the tower gets blown up, the final seconds of this episode end not with the theme music, but with this interesting fade out sound effect.
This isn't over.
No, it isn't.
I like to think their radio message was still playing over Hera and Ezra's final exchange there, and that authentic uncertainty, that hot mic moment, also went out to inspire the people. Episode 14, Rebel Resolve. Fulcrum tells Hera,
"You must stop your search for Kanan and go into hiding."
Now Fulcrum's voice is sounding more feminine, showing how they're getting closer to revealing her identity. Ahsoka Tano also had to forget about her Jedi Master and go into hiding after Order 66. They intercept the droid courier and swap it with Chopper, who infiltrates the Imperial systems and steals some info. Chopper pushes an astromech off the Ghost. Zeb's reaction here is just great, but that astromech survives. He just kind of trembles between two Lothcats. Still pretty mean for Chopper to do that. They read the file on Kanan, and it lists his past crimes, including theft of Imperial supplies, resisting arrest, assaulting officers, and piloting without a license. After some torture, Kanan is taken to Mustafar, current home to Darth Vader's castle, and Hera describes it as
that Mustafar is where Jedi go to die.
As it was here, where the Jedi Anakin was overtaken, killed, if you will, by the Sith Lord Vader. And episode 15, Fire Across the Galaxy, the season 1 finale, the Ghost crew steals an Imperial transport, and as it takes off, the smoke, exhaust, and dust forms the curved swooshes of the Rebel insignia. Nice touch there. The tie that Ezra and Zeb stole on Lothal in episode 4 comes back, but Sabine has painted it, making it look as ridiculously flashy and dumb as, you know, a spy trying to blend in would if she painted her Mandalorian armor that way. Whatever, the show's for kids. The Inquisitor knows that physical torture isn't working, so he's using Kanan's guilt over abandoning his master and the Jedi to try to break him. Kanan recalls Deppa's last word to him. Run. Again, this is something we will actually see in the Bad Batch. It's a heartbreaking moment. The rebels use pulse detonators to disable Tarkin's Star Destroyer. Reinforcements are sent in though, so Chopper contacts Fulcrum, and every time we see her hood, I think back in 2014, I just remember thinking this is probably Leia, right? But the reveal of who it really is, so much better. Ezra frees Kanan, and the Inquisitor is waiting for them both. The three of them duel with lightsabers, Kanan at one point using Ezra's, Ezra at one point using Kanan's. It's a 2-on-1 duel, evoking the climax of Phantom Menace. It's so great, and Ezra gets thrown off the bridge. Kanan thinks he's dead, and thinking he has nothing left to fear, he's able to beat back the Inquisitor, and the Inquisitor throws himself into the fire, leaving us with some chilling final words.
You have no idea what you've unleashed here today. There are some things far more frightening than death.
In this one line, we sense the tortured life that these Inquisitors lived when they were living under Vader and the Emperor. The rebels are saved by some Corellian cruisers with the holo projection of Senator Bail Organa, and finally revealed the agent Fulcrum, who is not Leia Organa, but Ahsoka Tano.
So what happens now?
I don't know. One chapter has closed for you, Ezra Bridger. This is a new day, a new beginning.
Ahsoka Tano! go! In 2014, we had last seen Ahsoka in the Clone Wars series, Season 5, leaving Anakin behind. There were some unfinished storylines that were going to be released on Netflix, but it was so cool to see her again. Now in 2020, Ahsoka's immediate aftermath of Clone Wars Season 5 was shown in Clone Wars final season, Season 7 on Disney+. Ahsoka's time in between would be explored in the 2016 E.K. Johnston novel, Ahsoka, part of which was adapted in an episode of Tales of the Jedi in 2022. But here, they have aged up Snips by 15 years, she's got longer snips, the stripes are stretched downward, still voiced by Ashley Eckstein though, Rosario Dawson plays her in live action now. Really, the character just keeps showing up at all different times in history. As Season 1 began with Vader's face, so it ends, as Tarson tells Kallus that the Emperor has sent an alternative solution. And whereas episode 13 ended with the broadcast dying out over the title, now episode 15 ends with this sound. Rebels Season 1, I think, was still finding its footing. It was fun, but it really just gets better from here. Season 2 will explore more of the Ghost Crew's backstories. Rebels Season 2, Episodes 1 and 2, The Siege of Lothal, Parts 1 and 2. The Ghost Crew now works for the Rebel Phoenix Squadron, led by Jun Sato, and including Ahsoka Tano. Ezra, you will notice, still has his scar from he and Kanan's fight with the Inquisitor in the Season 1 finale. Just a bit of nice continuity for this series that it sticks with as it continues. Just to show Ezra's brushes with the dark side stay with him. Lord Vader shakes down Minister Tua, and we get a close-up of his outstretched hand gesturing toward Tua, seen by Kallus, like he knows this high-ranking wizard is known to force choke officers. And this season we start to see how Kallus starts to have second thoughts about his loyalties. Tua reaches out to the rebels to defect, offering a list of rebel synthesizers on Lothal and the true reason the Emperor cares about Lothal. But Tua's shuttle explodes and Vader blames the rebels, and the Bridger home is destroyed. Ezra also later sees Tarkin Town, another possible refuge, going up in smoke. So like Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, you can't go home again! As they try to escape, Ezra and Kanan sense a cold presence, and boom! Vader, red lightsaber, same pose he strikes in the Rogue One kill box. He takes it to Ezra and Kanan one-handed, and he seems to just be playing with them. But why? Really, he wants them to escape so that he can track them to the rest of the rebel fleet. Which brings us to this crucial moment when Vader turns to look out of his cockpit, sensing a presence he hasn't felt since. And this moment is so good.
The fear, the anger, the hate. It's the Sith Lord we faced.
The apprentice lives.
Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to Vader, mother. She assumed Anakin was dead. This season shows Ahsoka in denial of this truth that Anakin is the same person as Vader, and I don't think she really believes it until she actually sees that face beneath the mask in the season finale. Vader communicates with Palpatine, voiced here by Sam Witwer, and he tells the Emperor that the apprentice of Skywalker lives.
This is an opportunity we cannot let pass. Skywalker's apprentice could lead us to other lost Jedi.
Such as Kenobi.
Yeah, quite a few promises made here for this season. Vader-Ahsoka rematch. Witwer's voice tells us that the animated version of Maul may be in the works. And someday, later in this series, we'll get the return of Kenobi! Episode 3, The Lost Commanders. Ahsoka sends a ghost crew to the Stelo system to find somebody that she used to know. Rex, former clone trooper from the 501st and later the 332nd Companies. Recurring companion to Ahsoka Tano and Anakin and Kenobi in Clone Wars. He's joined by Gregor and Wolf. Gregor's shirt has a Power Sliders logo on it. Power Sliders was a diner on Abafar where Gregor was a dishwasher for a bit. Gregor agrees to help them find a base location if they use Zeb as bait to catch a Jupa, that's a giant worm creature that they could feed on for a year. This scene where they catch it, totally an homage to Jaws. Kanan doesn't trust clones after Order 66, of course, but Rex says that they never betrayed the Jedi because they removed their control chips, and you can see a scar on their heads from where those chips were surgically removed, a process that we see on Rex in the Clone Wars Season 7 finale. Rex tells Ezra,
"A great Jedi once told me that the best leaders lead by example."
Something that must have been said to him by Anakin when Rex served under his command during the Clone Wars, but Wolf ratted them out and an Imperial drone damages the Phantom. Episode 4, Relics of the Old Republic. Stranded on Stelos, Rex offers a few possible rebel base sites, and the other two are like, you know what, I'm actually done with war. Agent Kallus arrives with AT-ATs, or AT-ATs, on the horizon, an homage to how these things were first introduced on Hoth and Empire Strikes Back. Ezra uses a force to see through a sandstorm and fires at a weak point on the walkers. Kallus almost finishes them.
Just like the old days.
Yeah, just like the old days, Clone Wars Rex is back! And we meet a new Inquisitor here, the Fifth Brother. His design was actually inspired by unused artwork for The Force Awakens. We saw the live-action version of the Fifth Brother in Obi-Wan Kenobi, played by Sun Kang. The rebels escape Stelos, where Rex reunites with Ahsoka. Later, it was confirmed that Gregor and Wolf actually stayed behind and made that last AT-AT their new home. Dave Filoni confirmed that there was a deleted scene that showed this. Episode 5, always two there are. Of course, a reference to Yoda's line about the Sith and Phantom Menace. The Sith rule of two, which comes back in the Sith Temple in Malachor this season. Here it refers to two Inquisitors, the Fifth Brother and the Seventh Sister, who's voiced by Sarah Michelle Gellar, Kanan actor Freddie Prinze Jr.'s wife. Ezra, Sabine, and Zeb and Chopper take the Phantom to get some medical supplies from an Old Republic medical base. It's kind of a scene straight out of Aliens. Chopper encounters an ID-9 seeker droid, Pet, that belongs to the Seventh Sister. Fifth Brother captures Sabine. Seventh Sister captures and interrogates Ezra about Ahsoka. Zeb and Chopper rescue Ezra and Sabine and escape back to the Rebel fleet, where Kanan is shocked to learn about these new Inquisitors. How many are there? Episode 6, Brothers of the Broken Horn. Rex and Kanan train Ezra. They butt heads over whether one should be a soldier or a Jedi. Ezra says he's not sure if he wants to be either because our dude is in a mood. A distress call comes from Vizago's ship. Remember him from season 1. The ship is called the Broken Horn, which has actually been taken over by Hondo Ohnaka, the pirate, who also appeared in the Clone Wars, voiced by Jim Cummings. You can also see this character on the Disneyland Galaxy's Edge Ride Smuggler's Run. He claims Vizago lost the ship to him in a game of sabacc. An Imperial ship attacks, and Chopper and Ezra fix the ship just in time to jump to hyperspace. Ezra agrees to help Ohnaka with a deal. They dock with the planet Nixus to deliver the goods to a buyer. As Morrigan, you remember him, in the Nexus hub, you can see a bunch of posters on the walls, including one for the Imperial Navy that reads, "The shape of freedom and protecting the galaxy with strength and justice." There's also an ad for the blue milk that every Star Wars fan knows, and a poster that reads, "Leave it in hyperdrive." Ezra screwing around with Ohnaka this episode really helps him realize that the life of a thief and a smuggler is less appealing to him than the discipline of being a Jedi. But is it the discipline or the power? Episode 7, Wings of the Master. Kanan and the Phoenix Squadron try bringing some food to the oppressed people of Ibar. Rex brings up a prototype blockade buster that they can find in Shantipole. Hera, Sabine, and Zeb get through Shantipole's tricky atmosphere, and the Mon Calamari engineer Quarry saves them from falling off an edge of the cliff. Quarry also appears in the animated series Lego Star Wars: The Freemaker Adventures. Quarry shows them this blockade buster called the Blade Wing. This ship would eventually become the B-Wing, a fighter seen in the original trilogy. Didn't get a lot of screen time though. Hera takes control of the B-Wing. Sabine tells Quarry that she'll fix the Blade Wing's laser aiming system.
Never get between a Mandalorian and a weapons package.
Yeah, something to know about Sabine. As a former Imperial weapons expert, she just loves to blow shit up. The success of this mission gets Hera promoted to Phoenix Squadron leader. Episode 8, Blood Sisters. So Sabine, Ezra, and Chopper head to the Havoc outpost to intercept a courier, which ends up being the droid EG-86. Sabine reunites with an old friend turned bounty hunter, Ketsu Onyo, voiced by Gina Torres of Firefly fame. Ketsu works for a crime syndicate, Black Sun, and she's seeking out the EG droid. Through Ketsu, we see what Sabine's life could have looked like if she didn't join the rebellion, and we learn that a penchant to blow shit up goes further when there's an Imperial crest on that shit. Episode 9 is Stealth Strike. Ezra and Commander Sato are captured by an Imperial interdictor light cruiser, which creates a gravity well strong enough to pull ships out of hyperspace. Wow. This is the episode that many of us single out to accuse Chopper of being a war criminal, because this episode ends with Chopper sabotaging that ship so that it explodes and takes out 2 Imperial cruisers with it, which some estimates online have put from around 4,500 total deaths to maybe 47,000 deaths. I don't know. I think it's probably on the lower end of that, but either way, that's a lot of people. Now, you could say that Luke Skywalker blew up the Death Star. That's a lot of stormtroopers, but the Death Star was just about to blow up the Rebel base. They were totally justified. They were acting in defense. Chopper, meanwhile, did not need to kill this many people. Okay, episode 10, The Future of the Force. This episode is the first one to take place in 3 BBY. We're moving ahead in time here, folks. Closer and closer to the events of A New Hope. Ahsoka realizes that details about Vader are just kind of hard to find. Why is that? She comes to a civilian transport that was wiped out by the Seventh Sister and the Fifth Brother, and they go on a rescue mission to recover some Force-sensitive kids. Ahsoka mentions a past incident where Force-sensitive kids were taken during the Clone Wars. This is a reference to Clone Wars Season 2, Episode 3, Children of the Force, where Darth Sidious sent Cad Bane after some kids. And so after swearing off the Jedi Order, we see that Ahsoka has to return to her obligation to the Force users that are out there in the universe, which adds to her guilt that had she not left Anakin and the Order, maybe Anakin might not have fallen to the dark side and Order 66 wouldn't have been as effective. Okay, episode 11, Legacy. This episode aired on December 9th, 2015, making it the last Rebels episode to air before The Force Awakens, and the sequel trilogy just kind of took everything over. Ezra dreams about his parents in Imperial prison, and Hera and Kanan mention hearing about a prison break. The group splits up. Ezra and Kanan to the Phantom to Lothal, the rest staying in Gorel with the Ghost to help fend off the imps, and Ezra follows a Lothcat that he saw in his dream, and I'm telling you, Lothcats are just the best. And he meets another prisoner, Ryder Azadi, voiced by Clancy Brown, who tells Ezra that his parents heard his broadcast from Season 1, and that inspired them to organize their prison break, but they died in the breakout. So Kanan comforts it by telling him that his parents live inside him, but it's kind of a mixed rite of passage for Ezra. While it definitely hardens his resolve, it also saddles him with some survivor's guilt and reminders of some personal ties in his life that just makes him more vulnerable to the dark side. Okay, episode 12, A Princess on Lothal, the Leia episode. Bail Organa picks his daughter Leia to help the rebels secure some much needed cruisers. But it's tricky because while the Ghost crew are all public criminals, Leia and Bail are still pretending to be diplomatically neutral. Leia is voiced here by Julie Dolan, who also voices Leia in some video games and on the Star Tours ride at Disney. The plan is a success, and the rebels steal the 3 cruisers, and Leia is able to blame the Imperials for their failure to protect them. And inspired by this, writer Azadi joins the rebel cause. Okay, episode 13, The Protector of Conquered Dawn. This is an important episode for the Mandalorian side of Star Wars titles, as Conquered Dawn is one of the moons of Mandalore, and the rebels run into the Mandalorian faction called the Protectors. They're led by Fenn Rau, a former pilot instructor that Kanan knows from the Battle of Megiddo. This was in an issue of the Star Wars Kanan comic. The symbol on Fenn Rau's helmet is based on Joe Johnston's original designs for Boba Fett before the making of The Empire Strikes Back. Filoni named the character after Brad Rau, director of this episode, and a bunch of other Star Wars animated stuff, including Resistance and The Bad Batch. They pilot Fang fighters. These ships would also appear in The Mandalorian Season 3 in chapters 23 and 24. And we learn that these Mandalorians have sided with the Empire. That's right, the Mandalorian factions have some diverse loyalties, which will be important to Sabine in Season 3. Sabine reveals to the Protectors that she is from House Vizsla, and she challenges Rau to single combat. Working together, Kanan and Sabine capture Rau, and he agrees to allow the rebels safe passage through Conquered Dawn. But we learn that even the Ghost crew can be divided by their past loyalties and their past lives before the rebellion. Episode 14, Legends of the Lasat. The Ghost crew arrives to Nixus Hub 218. This is the same world that we saw in the Brothers of the Broken Horn. They rescue a pair of Lasats, Chava the Wise and Gron, so Zeb ain't the last of his species. That's good news. These two are seeking the mystical world of Lyra San, where surviving Lasats can find refuge. Zeb transforms his bow rifle into its true form and combines it with Chava's staff, revealing Lyra San's location in the uncharted wild space. Zeb decides to stay with the Ghost crew to continue looking for Lasats, another rebel choosing to stick with the rebellion rather than another life that they could live. But this is the episode that the ancient names of the sides of the Force are first revealed by Chava, calling the light side Ashla and the dark side Bogan. These get repeated by the Bendu in a later episode of Rebels. We'll get to him later, but these terms actually come from early treatments of the first Star Wars film by George Lucas. And Ahsoka's name in early development for Clone Wars was actually Ashla, and Ashla is a name that she later takes on as an alias during her exile during E.K. Johnston's novel. Episode 15, The Call. This is the first appearance of the Purgle. I mentioned in the pilot episode that the sound of the Force that Ezra heard sounds like a whale call. A possible Purgle out there, and he meets them here. Purgle will play an important role in the final episode of the series. They show up in live action in chapter 17 of The Mandalorian, as well as Ahsoka. Purgle consume the Clauson 36 gas in the atmosphere to power their ability to jump into hyperspace. During this mission to capture fuel from the mining guild, Ezra and Kanan help these Purgle, and Ezra forms a special bond with these creatures that will pay off later. Episode 16, Homecoming. So this is an important Hera episode. We visit the Twi'lek home of the Ryloth system that first appeared in flashback in the Clone Wars Season 1 episode, Jedi Crash. We meet Hera's father, Cham Syndulla, a Clone Wars hero with the nickname of the Liberator of Ryloth. His first appearance was in the Clone Wars episode Liberty on Ryloth. Father and daughter argue, and we hear Hera's Twi'lek accent come through here.
I am part of something bigger.
Cham only cares about the Twi'lek resistance and not the overall rebel cause, so he just wants to bomb the Imperial carrier, while Hera wants to capture it so that the rebels can use it. But they do get to blow up an Imperial Star Destroyer, so you know Cham does get his show of force. Episode 17, The Honorable Ones. So we return to Geonosis, that's the planet from Attack of the Clones, where they learn the Geonosian insectoid species are all dead. Why? Well, because Palpatine ordered the genocide of the Geonosians to keep secret the construction of the Death Star. Oh my god. Zeb and Kallus get stranded together on a cave on a nearby ice moon. They run into a Bonzami creature, which gets its name from the Zamboni. This is an important episode for Kallus, who admits to Zeb here that he respects the Lasats as warriors, and he didn't agree with the Empire's decision to exterminate them, and that the bow rifle he previously claimed to have stolen from a dead Lasat honor guard was actually given to him by that guard after he defeated him in an honorable duel. The two leave each other with a mutual respect, and they nearly started kissing, I would say. But that coldness that Kallus felt on this moon was nothing compared to the coldness that greeted him back on his Imperial Star Destroyer. Our man's got thoughts. Episode 18, Shroud of Darkness. Okay, so all Jedi Temple or Sith Temple episodes are must-watches. This one's no different. Kanan and Ezra battle the 7th sister and 5th brother because Chopper, I guess, forgot to pick them up. They're on Usalon, and Ezra and Kanan are saved by the Tibbities. You remember these guys. 7th sister says,
Such a handsome face.
I don't go for crazy anymore.
Yeah, it's a fun husband and wife exchange between Geller and Prince. Ahsoka watches a recording of Anakin.
I've made some adjustments to the classic Form 4 techniques.
So Form 4, also known as Ataru, is one of the 7 forms of lightsaber combat practiced by both Jedi and Sith. It's an aggressive style that is fast-paced and effective against single opponents, though weaker in prolonged combat in confined spaces. Anakin made some adjustments to Form 4, yeah, because it failed him with Dooku, and this could actually explain why Ahsoka uses 2 sabers. They return to the Lothal Jedi Temple, and Ezra asks Ahsoka if she wants to open it, but she says she's no longer a Jedi, but because she is with them, a different, deeper door on the temple opens. Inside, the 3 split up because we are in a spiritual sequel to last season's Path of the Jedi, and it's so good. Kanan seeks knowledge to defeat the Inquisitors, and he's greeted in his vision by a Sentinel, who's a Jedi Temple guard. His double-sided saber tells us that this is going to be a familiar face, and yes, it is the Utapawan Grand Inquisitor that was voiced by Jason Isaacs. It's a warning that even great Jedi can still fall to the will of the dark side, so keep an eye on Ezra. Ezra, meanwhile, meets with Yoda. More than just his voice, this time we actually see Yoda as he communes with Ezra from the swamps of Dagobah. And he shows Ezra a near shot-for-shot recreation of the closing shots of Attack of the Clones, and he tells Ezra to find Malachor. For Ahsoka, Matt Lanter returns as Anakin in this episode.
Ahsoka, why did you leave? Where were you when I needed you? Do you know what I've become?
Yeah, our girl cannot accept it. They escape an attack from the Inquisitors, who are able to access his temple because they are former Jedi. The 5th brother says that the Jedi are growing in their power, and Vader replies,
"It will be their undoing."
True, true, true. Okay, episode 19, The Forgotten Droid, and episode 20, The Mystery of the Chopper Base. They are both fun, but filler episodes from Rebels Season 2. I'd say all you really need to know about these is that in episode 20, they do run into some Krykna ice spiders like the ones Din Djarin and Grogu run into in Mando Season 2. Okay, here we go. The 2 final episodes, episode 21 and episode 22, Twilight of the Apprentice, part 1 and part 2. So Ezra, Ahsoka, and Kanan go to Malachor, which they say has always been off limits to the Jedi. And yeah, no shit. Ahsoka says,
"There's always a bit of truth in legends."
I love this line. So many ways to read it. Truth in legends, aka expanded universe material. Truth in legends like Ahsoka's experience in Mortis. Truth in legendary figures like Maul. And truth in the legends of the Sith, who for thousands of years were really the dominant class of Force wielders. Malachor was actually first alluded to back in 2004 in Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords. It's where the dark side of the Force runs strong. Approaching this planet, the trio see these large black structures almost reminiscent of the Black Monolith in 2001: A Space Odyssey. They jut out of the planet. I gotta say, the Sith design style, just way better than the Jedi style, but the Sith Temple appears like a pyramid, just like the holocron that Ezra will later obtain. Dave Filoni has said in interviews that they designed the Sith Temple to have red glowing lines at the base to look like veins, because they want the Sith temples and Jedi temples to feel like sentient creatures in their own right. The 3 of them find this battlefield where Sith and Jedi fought thousands of years ago. The Jedi hoping to stop a Sith super weapon. The Sith activated that weapon and they turned all these living beings into Pompeii-like stone. Now this has actually inspired a kind of Sith drug called Ashes of Malachor, which allows consumers to increase their ties to the dark side and power at the cost of their own mortality. Maul is actually seen inhaling some Ashes of Malachor in the 2nd issue of the comic book series Darth Maul #2 that was in 2017. Ezra picks up a broken crossguard lightsaber with a green blade. This episode came out a few months after The Force Awakens, so this gave some historical credence to Kylo Ren's blade design. The 8th brother, a new Inquisitor, has been stalking them, and he keeps like fighting them and then being like, "Hey, you better come chase me." Meanwhile, Ezra meets this old man who calls himself Old Master. This is actually Maul, voiced by Sam Witwer, who of course voiced the character in Clone Wars. So awesome to have him back. When this episode came out in 2016, the last time we had seen Maul was in Clone Wars Season 5 after his seizure of Mandalore with the Death Watch, when he had the Darksaber, and he was left tortured and taken by Sidious, who at this point had replaced him with Dooku, and soon after that replacing Dooku with Anakin. Now later, Clone Wars Season 7 would show Maul's return to Mandalore after his escape from Sidious, his duel with Ahsoka, and his escape during Order 66. So yeah, right now, our guy hates the Empire. Ezra also uses an alias when he talks to him, names himself Jabba, which Maul can't help but laugh at because he did meet the real Jabba the Hutt in Clone Wars episode Eminence when Maul was head of the Shadow Collective. The Sith Temple requires 2 Jedi to lift the stones together and 2 to ascend the pyramid at any given time, reflecting of course the Sith rule of 2, which Maul tries to use to isolate himself with Ezra and manipulate Ezra's pain.
Your anger is a wellspring. You must use it. Your passions give you strength, and through strength you gain power. You have seen it. You feel it. You must break your chains.
Maul and Ezra find the Sith holocron. Now, this Sith holocron has a small inscription that translates into Latin in Umbris potestas est, or in the shadows there is power. Maul uses the holocron to open doors, a metaphor for the doors to the dark side it can unlock. The 3 Inquisitors unite and they recognize Maul as the Shadow, which is kind of their way saying, shit, Omar coming! Kanan, Ezra, and Ahsoka and Maul versus the 3 Inquisitors. The lightsaber dueling is so great in this finale. Maul force chokes and kills the 7th sister. Maul sees something something moving on the surface, blocking out the light from above. It's a literal walking shadow, definitely Vader approaching. The 5th brother goes down. The 8th brother falls when his spinny blade breaks, but to his death, probably, we're not exactly sure, probably. Maul blinds Kanan. Oh my God. Now this blindness is actually part of the character design from the start, because in a now deleted tweet, Lucasfilm's Pablo Hidalgo said that Kanan and another blind Jedi character, Ram Kota from the Legends canon, were both inspired by Zatoichi, who is a prominent fictional character in Japanese pop culture. Ezra reaches the top of the pyramid and activates the holocron. It activates the Presence, which is a disembodied intelligence taking the form of pink and purple lightning. It is a female presenting voice played by actress Nika Futterman. The Presence is the last remains of a female Sith who once commanded the super weapon housed in the Sith temple. This Presence says,
"Knowledge is power."
Kanan reaches for a mask left behind by one of these Jedi to battle Maul. Literally, there is truth in Legends here. He uses this and the Force to defeat Maul. The Presence tells Ezra that she's been waiting to unleash her power at his command. When Ezra refuses, she says that perhaps the other who approaches will claim it, but it's not Maul, it's Vader. It's Vader versus Ezra. Vader says,
"Then you will die braver than most."
But Ahsoka intervenes, and Ahsoka finally admits what she's been denying all season, and this exchange is so great.
Anakin Skywalker was weak. I destroyed him.
Then I will avenge his death.
Revenge is not the Jedi way.
I am no Jedi.
Yes, Ahsoka transforms her guilt for leaving the Jedi Order, for leaving Anakin, into a new power to go further than the Jedi orthodoxy restraint would allow her to go. They start fighting. Meanwhile, blind Kanan arrives with Chopper adorably holding his hand. The Master and Apprentice remove the holocron together. Ahsoka holds Vader back. Ahsoka slices Vader's helmet, and underneath, oh my God, we see Vader's face. Now it includes an eyebrow. The eyebrow's supposed to be burned off, but they use this because they use Anakin's 3D animation model from the lightsaber tutorial earlier. And listen to this, we hear Ahsoka mixed in with Matt Lanter's voice and James Earl Jones' voice.
Ahsoka.
But as he transitions to "Then you will die," it is just one voice.
Then you will die.
The temple collapses as they duel. We don't learn until later how Ahsoka got through her battle with Vader, but as Vader steps out of the ruins, we do see Ahsoka's Morai bird from the Mortis arc in Clone Wars. The final shot of the season shows Ezra with the red light of the Sith holocron reflected in his eyes. Like that scar on his face, his brush with the dark side leaves a mark. Season 3, let's get started. Episodes 1 and 2, Steps into Shadow parts 1 and 2. It's 6 months after the season 2 finale, and Ezra has a new haircut, a new green lightsaber, and some unnatural abilities unlocked by the Sith holocron from Malachor. It continues to speak to him through the Presence, that is the spiritual essence of that Sith who activated that super weapon on Malachor. Ezra shows off that new haircut, but also turns to show us that scar. This is his archetypal unhealable wound from that duel with the Grand Inquisitor in season 1, symbolizing the festering dark side presence in him. They rescue Hondo Ohnaka, and Ezra lets his Ugnaught partner die and then uses the Force to walk an Imperial walker off a ledge. Yikes! Sabine repainted her armor this season so that on her pauldron now is Ahsoka's Morai bird, because as far as they know, Ahsoka is dead. But it's this bird, this episode, that leads Kanan to Bendu. Hera has a new captain badge since she's been promoted in the Phoenix Squadron. Ezra speaks to the holocron, and its red glow is in his eyes, giving us this close-up matching the close-up of Thrawn's red Chiss eyes later this episode. Kanan confiscates the holocron and gets summoned out to the Adelon Winds by Bendu, voiced by Tom Baker, who's the 4th Doctor. In Doctor Who, David Tennant is now voicing Huyang and Ahsoka. Bendu is a Force user who's neither Jedi nor Sith. Actually, the word Bendu comes from George Lucas's original treatment for Star Wars, when Jedi Knights were going to be called Jedi Bendu. Bendu teaches Kanan how to use the Force to see, mostly by seeing past his own fear, so that he can walk past these Krykna spiders. Kanan leaves the holocron with Bendu. Grand Admiral Thrawn enters the chat, voiced by Lars Mikkelsen, who will also be playing Thrawn in live action. He is the villain of these final 2 seasons of Rebels and of Ahsoka. The fact that he shows up here in the premiere of Rebels Season 3 is a very, very big deal, because this season was 2016-2017, when everyone was kind of confused what Star Wars Legends were versus Star Wars canon, and everyone was really worried when Disney made that recategorization, because Thrawn is the coolest character from Star Wars Expanded Universe fiction. From Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire novels in 1991, the fact that Dave Filoni put him in Rebels here shows us how important those stories are to him and how we can never forget them. So Thrawn wisely outsmarts the Rebels' plot to steal Y-Wings.
I will start my operations here and pull the Rebels apart piece by piece. They'll be the architects, of their own destruction.
And in this transition, we see his red eyes watching over their every move, as he will throughout this entire season. Thrawn ends up being correct. Ezra's dark side influence bullishness causes them to gain only a few Y-Wings at the cost of their Phantom shuttle. R.I.P. Phantom 1. On episode 3, the Holocrons of Fate, Maul captures most of the rebel crew and demands from Kanan and Ezra both the Sith Holocron and Jedi Holocron. Maul recognizes Sabine as Mandalorian and says that he once ruled her people, referring to the season 5 arc in Clone Wars where Maul took over the Death Watch and the Darksaber and took Mandalore. Bendu tells Kanan and Ezra that if Jedi and Sith Holocrons are united, they would give the wielder too much vision, something Kanan and Ezra learn the value of by recovering the Sith Holocron from a Krykna cave, resisting their fear, and Bendu warns,
once a secret is known, it cannot be unknown.
They return to Maul's asteroid base, which was last seen in the Son of Dathomir comic run, and after Maul tries to blow Kanan out of the airlock, he does a forced spacewalk like Leia will do in The Last Jedi. This episode released in October 2016, while The Last Jedi was still being shot because Carrie Fisher was still alive at this point. Ezra and Maul join the Holocrons, and for a moment, Maul sees his destination.
I see him.
Twin sons.
This will eventually lead Maul to Tatooine to find Kenobi! Alright, episode 4, the Antilles extraction. After losing a bunch of A-Wings, the rebels get a transmission from a new mystery Fulcrum agent using Ahsoka's same symbol based on her Togruta head markings. Sabine infiltrates an Imperial Academy to recruit Wedge Antilles, voiced by Nathan Kress. Here, in their simulation, the TIE fighters explode in a way reminiscent to toys, where the wings pop off to simulate battle damage. When Sabine, Wedge, and others walk out to the TIEs, they use this catwalk and lower into the cockpits, and I love this distinction that we see throughout Star Wars. You step up into rebel ships, you lower down into these bat-like Imperial TIEs. We actually saw this in the Eye of Aldani episode of Andor as well. I think it looks so cool. Kallus actually ends up helping them escape to repay Zeb for that ice cave moment that they had. Episode 5, Hera's Heroes. So we return to Ryloth, where Hera's father, Cham, and Numa ride blurgs. These are the same Arvala 7 mounts that Din Djarin rides in The Mandalorian, but they're actually first seen in Ewok's The Battle of Endor. Zeb punches a scout trooper to steal his helmet, a helmet that Ezra will continue to use and might show up in the background of Sabine's home in Ahsoka. The Syndulas have lost their family Kalikori.
It honors all who have come before.
Each parent adds to the artwork to include themselves in the legacy.
Family history is living art.
So an appreciation of family history through art is a key theme from here forward. As Thrawn says this episode,
to defeat an enemy, you must know them. Not simply their battle tactics, but their history, philosophy, art.
Sabine Wren is an artist, and that will play a big role in Ahsoka. Also, Kalikori will show up in Luthen's shop in Andor, and it's just kind of crappy that he has one. All right, episode 6, The Last Battle. Rex takes them to a battlefield from the Clone Wars era. They get captured by battle droids still on the Separatist programming, led by General Kalani. This episode shows how for Clone Wars veterans, the war didn't really end with any true resolution, as they were all misled by these false motives and political games. And because this is a Clone Wars vibe episode, this episode ends with the Clone Wars animated series logo and theme over the credits. Alright, episode 7, Imperial Super Commandos. Sabine Wren tries to lure Mandalorian Finn Rao and his protectors to the rebel cause over a game of Cubicod. This is from the 2007 novel Legacy of the Force Sacrifice. We see the Phantom 2 in this episode as a new paint job, thanks Sabine, with a Timothy on the side. They get captured by a group of Imperial Mandalorians led by Gar Saxon, voiced by Ray Stevenson, the late actor playing Baylan Skoll in Ahsoka. Again, we learn that some Mandalorians just support the Empire, and it kind of sucks. Sabine and Finn escape, but Sabine defeats Gar in hand-to-hand combat, and Finn joins the Rebels, a key partner from here forward. Episode 8, Iron Squadron. The Spectres meet the Iron Squadron, led by Commander Sato's nephew Mart, voiced by Zachary Gordon. It's kind of a parallel team to the Ghosts, just younger and dumber, but both teams have crabby astromechs and love space waffles. Gutierrez is named after Rebels retcon host Andy Gutierrez, and the Rebels recon staff get shouted out through the names throughout this episode. Okay, episode 9, the Winkathu job. Hondo Onaka is back, wearing a stupid pirate hat with an even stupider as Morrigan hanging out with him, returning from the premiere with that stolen Imperial landing craft. They all head to the planet Winkathu, hoping to get some proton bombs, but Imperial DT sentry droids attack. These are inspired by the Dark Troopers in the Dark Forces game, which would also go on to inspire the Phase 3 Dark Troopers in The Mandalorian Season 2. Just everyone be careful with these Hondo episodes because it'll make you really hate that load-in area for Smuggler's Run. I'm sorry, I'm just not a huge fan of Hondo Onaka. He's kind of f***ing annoying. Alright, episode 10, An Inside Man. So back on Lothal, Ezra and Kanan rejoin Ryder Azadi, Clancy Brown's escaped prisoner who knew Ezra's parents when they were in prison together. We saw him in Season 2, and Azadi serves as the governor of Lothal and Ahsoka. Family friend Sumar returns from episode 4 of season 1, but he dies when Thrawn makes him test a faulty speeder bike. The workers wear outfits that kind of look like color swap Narkina 5 prisoner outfits from Andor. Thrawn does a whole deep dive on all the imagery and art that he can find in relation to the Ghost crew, including depictions of Loth wolves, as well as murals from Mandalore depicting an ancient battle with the Jedi. We actually saw these in Clone Wars, and this one with the woman crying is clearly based on Pablo Picasso's Guernica. Also, Thrawn has a Jedi Temple Guard mask on his desk, like the one the Grand Inquisitor wore. Kallus reveals himself as Fulcrum, and the rebels learn of Thrawn's plans to build the new TIE fighter, the TIE Defender, which comes with shields. It's designed based on the 1994 TIE fighter video game. Episode 11, Visions and Voices. This is a very important episode to watch. This was the mid-season finale, the last episode to come out before Rogue One released in December 2016. Maul appears to Ezra in creepy background apparitions, just in these flashes of lightning, but there is no lightning storm going on. This is all just in Ezra's mind. He's freaking out. So they go to Bendu, where they find the real Maul, who takes Ezra to Dathomir, and Kanan and Sabine follow closely. As they walk into Dathomir, Maul explains,
"My family, the Night Sisters, were killed. Masterful witches they were."
We actually saw this in Clone Wars, a 4-part arc starting with the season 4 episode 19 episode Massacre. The Night Sisters was a force-wielding cult, including Maul's mother Talzin, who used sorcery to re-grant Maul the ability to walk. General Grievous killed many of them off, but we know of one survivor, Merrin, in Jedi Fallen Order, and now on Ahsoka, Thrawn acolyte Morgan Elsbeth was revealed to be a Night Sister. So everything we can find on the Night Sisters, we need to pay attention to. Maul places his hand on this leg of a statue, and we see the other statues bisected at the waist, the same kind of injury that Maul suffered from Kenobi. Actually, inside Maul's home, in the Mandoa language, he wrote Kenobi on the wall. He's got all kinds of interesting odds and ends. Some spears, like the one used by his brother Savage Opress, and a battle droid head. He also has a painting of Duchess Satine Kryze, sister to Bo-Katan, and Obi-Wan's former lover in Clone Wars, whom Maul executed with the Darksaber. We also hear a piano version of Satine's theme as Ezra looks up at it. And it kind of looks like Maul has defaced this portrait just out of hatred of Kenobi. But the most important object here is the Darksaber. Maul previously wielded it in season 5 of Clone Wars, and here on Rebels, it re-enters the Star Wars timeline. Yes, I've talked about the Darksaber a lot in all my breakdowns of The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, but this is where it re-enters the chat. Maul and Ezra drink a Night Sister potion to merge their minds to gain the knowledge that the other has from their Sith Jedi holocron crossover moment, and Maul realizes that Kenobi is on Tatooine, but they awaken the spirits of the Night Sisters.
Hey, how are you?
The spirits of the Night Sisters.
Sabine and Kanan get possessed by these spirits. They're trapped in the temple, and Maul leaves, but possessed Sabine has picked up the Darksaber. And to me, that is a critical moment, because I believe the Darksaber is cursed. It should have stayed in here. Sabine only picked it up because evil Night Sister sorcery compelled her to do so. The Night Sisters are behind a lot of this stuff. Ezra uses his green lightsaber and the Darksaber to destroy the altar, banishing the Night Sister ghosts, but in characters like Morgan Elsbeth, the Night Sister legacy lives on. Episode 12 and 13, The Ghosts of Geonosis Part 1 and 2. Rebel extremist Saw Gerrera returns, now voiced by Forrest Whitaker, who had just had a big moment as Saw Gerrera in Rogue One. This is the era of Saw that we actually saw in the flashback of Rogue One when he rescued Jyn Erso when he was still bald. Saw has gone missing on the planet of Geonosis that you remember from Attack of the Clones. And remember, the Geonosians had been mostly eradicated by the Empire to keep secret the Death Star construction. So Saw interrogates his surviving Geonosian named Click Clack, who draws 2 circles in the dirt indicating the Death Star, but everyone else is like, what's that? Rex explains that Saw's sister Steela Gerrera died from a Geonosian-built gunship, and we saw Steela in Clone Wars, and her death would be a rallying cry for the Onderonians. Click Clack's hideout also has a queen egg that would give the Geonosians a chance to repopulate. He also has a clone trooper helmet, the arm and head of a battle droid, and part of a destroyer droid. The rebels try to retrieve gas canisters to prove the Empire's war crimes, but they end up losing them in their escape, and Bail Organa says the Senate can't really do anything about it. Poor Geonosians. All right, episode 14, Warhead. It's a Zeb episode. Thrawn unleashes Imperial infiltrator droids across the galaxy, and one lands at Chopper Base on Adelon, cannibalizing other droids to repair itself and preparing to transmit info back to the Empire, hitting a self-destruct protocol, but they let it transmit and then delay the explosion for when it gets back to its base ship. Yet, Thrawn, from this, is able to use this to narrow down his search. Episode by episode, he's getting closer and closer to finding out where the rebels are. All right, episode 15, Trials of the Darksaber. This is an episode I brought up back in my Mandalorian breakdowns, and it's super important to understand the Mandalorian themes. Fen Rao gives us the history of the Darksaber.
Legend tells that it was created over 1,000 years ago by Tar Vizsla, the first Mandalorian ever inducted into the Jedi Order. After his passing, the Jedi kept the saber in their temple. That was until members of House Vizsla snuck in and liberated it.
So we get this ancient history of the Mandalorians and Jedi at war with each other. In Sabine's bunk, we see a rough draft of the mural that she'll later paint on Lothal. Chopper, we find out, is got the hots for her. Kanan and Ezra take Sabine out on a sword dueling session. Ezra first shows her ready position, which Sabine demonstrates while fighting Shin Hati in Ahsoka Episode 1. Kanan sheds some light on Sabine's struggles with the Force.
The Force resides in all living things, but you have to be open to it. Sabine is blocked. Her mind is conflicted.
Yes, Hu Yang in Ahsoka similarly dismisses Sabine's Force abilities. But during this training, Morai Bird still flap down to watch. Finn Rao gives Sabine Mandalorian vambraces that she will continue to wear in Ahsoka. She uses these to get the upper hand, but Kanan shuts her down for cheating, saying the Jedi won the war with the Mandalorians, and it wasn't through shortcuts, it was through discipline. Now, while Dave Filoni was crafting the Kanan Jarrus character, it was really important to him to craft him as an incomplete mentor in the style of Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings. That he's just too far beyond his ability to communicate his wisdom to the younger Padawans. So he's not a perfect teacher, and he often makes mistakes and learns lessons himself a little too late. So eventually Kanan finally comes around and just lets Sabine train with the actual darksaber.
It's heavier than I thought.
Energy constantly flows through the crystal. You're not fighting with a simple blade as much as you are directing a current of power. Your thoughts, your actions, they become energy.
And as Sabine duels, that blade gets lighter and lighter for her, a contrast to Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, who always struggles to lift that darksaber. And we get this amazing emotional moment from Sabine as she duels Kanan.
Everything I did was for family, for Mandalore. I built weapons, terrible weapons, but the Empire used them on Mandalore, on friends, on family. I helped enslave my people.
Please, please, please keep all of this in mind as you watch Sabine in Ahsoka, because this is where she is coming from. And this moment always just wrecks me.
The Empire wanted to destroy worlds, and they did. They destroyed mine.
So with Sabine and Ahsoka in the Ahsoka series, it's not a master-apprentice relationship. Sabine just wants a sister. And we see how messed up Sabine's family is in Episode 16, Legacy of Mandalore. They head to Cronist, a snowy mountain setting that I think is the prettiest location in Star Wars. They're attacked by super commandos led by Sabine's brother Tristan. They meet her mother, Countess Ursa, who also appears in the final season of Clone Wars, by the way. And we learn that House Wren is loyal to the Empire, with Gar Saxon considered the Emperor's hand. Ursa gives Saxon the darksaber in a trade for her daughter, but Saxon doesn't hold up his end of the bargain, and we end up in this incredible duel between Saxon with the darksaber and Sabine with Ezra's lightsaber, setting up Sabine to later use this green blade throughout Ahsoka. Sabine disarms Saxon of the darksaber, but Saxon didn't technically win it in combat, so the curse of none of these Mandalorians earning the darksaber lives on. Sabine, for now, decides to stay behind on Cronist. All right, Episode 17, Through Imperial Eyes, which is how this episode opens, through the eyes of our secret Fulcrum spy, Kallus. Ezra tries to get him to defect, and Thrawn arrives on his Star Destroyer, the Chimera. That was the name of his ship from his original novels. He trains in a sexy vest against a DT sentry droid, and his shutdown word is Ruck, which is the name of a male Nogri warrior who first protected, then assassinated Thrawn in those books. This is such a great Thrawn episode, and I highly recommend it. Thrawn's hallway is actually filled with Easter eggs. We see the Holy Grail from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Lucasfilm loves to do this. Just see Andor, it's kind of weird. We see Clone Commander Gree's helmet from Revenge of the Sith. This is one of the guys Yoda beheaded on Kashyyyk during Order 66. We see a bust of an Abednego, that's Elo Astes species created for the Force Awakens film, and then a digital version of Ralph McQuarrie's concept art that Rebels used as a painting of Lothal. And then on the back wall, Isalamiri. These are the lizard-like creatures from Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire novels, which were immune to the Force. They emitted these anti-Force bubbles. And of course, we see that Thrawn kept the Calicori that he stole from the Syndulla family, because for Thrawn, it is all about the art. Wolf Yularen from the ISB appears. You remember him? He was the white uniformed officer in Tarkin's meeting room on the Death Star in A New Hope. We end this episode with Thrawn knowing that Kallus is a traitor, but he lets it slide for now. Another important thing about Thrawn, our man is patient. All right, Episode 18, Secret Cargo. Secret Cargo revealed to be Senator Mon Mothma, another figure who returns in Ahsoka during the New Republic era, but this episode is important for her Andor period. And here she speaks out against the Emperor for the Gorman Massacre. She's voiced by Genevieve O'Reilly.
I name the Emperor himself for ordering the brutal attacks on the people of Gorman. Our self-appointed Emperor is little more than a lying executioner.
Mothma is now out of the Senate, on the run, and they have to fight off Thrawn's TIE defenders in the Archeon Nebula, which reminds me of Furiosa losing to Morton Joe's men during the sandstorm in Fury Road. It looks really cool. Mothma escapes to Dantooine, where she sends out a message to inspire the rebel cause.
For too long, I've watched the heavy hand of the Empire strangle our liberties. Despite Imperial threats, despite the Emperor himself, I have no fear as I take new action.
We see Bail Organa and General Jen Dodonna, and we also see the Lothal Bar from Season 1's Empire Day. So paired with Ezra's big broadcast in Season 1, this is the next important mass media call to action for the Rebel Alliance. Alright, episode 19, Double Agent Droid. It's a Chopper episode. Chopper gets hijacked by an Imperial agent, the Controller. There is a fun moment in this episode where the spy ship control room is inspired by George Lucas's first feature, THX-1138, a movie that gets referenced all the time, but you know what? Watch it. It's groundbreaking, but also not that good. Alright, episode 20, Twin Sons. Definitely one to watch. This episode opens with the twin sons of Tatooine, and Maul, returning here after first seeing Kenobi in Phantom Menace, wanders the desert delirious.
See him in my mind's eye. Kenobi. Kenobi!
And you just gotta see the behind the scenes footage of Sam Witwer recording this in the ADR booth.
In my mind's eye. Kenobi. Kenobi!
Ezra and Chopper sneak off to Tatooine to save Obi-Wan Kenobi, but Ezra sees how coarse and rough and irritating the sand is. He doesn't really need to be in this episode. He does get saved once by Maul and again by Kenobi, and Kenobi tells Ezra that Obi-Wan Kenobi isn't the answer to defeating the Sith as far as he knows. This is just a manipulation by Maul. Kenobi at first has no intention of fighting Maul until Maul forces his hand.
Oh, you have a purpose here. Perhaps you are protecting something? No. Protecting someone.
And this leads to one of the shortest but best duels in all of Star Wars, and it's all in the build-up. Now, Sam Witwer loves to break this down in interviews, but basically, Kenobi starts in the Clone Wars era Ewan McGregor pose with the two fingers, and then he realizes, no, mistakes were made during that era. So then he shifts to the two-handed Alec Guinness ready position from A New Hope. But then, seeing the confidence in Maul's eyes, he decides to take another breath, and he shifts to the Qui-Gon Jinn pose. Batter up, trying to bait Maul into trying the same move that he used on Qui-Gon. Maul takes his bait, he tries to do the same kind of flourish and stab, but Kenobi is ready for him. And recognizing that he has freed his old foe from this vengeance, he cradles him.
Tell me, is it the Chosen One?
He is.
He will avenge us.
Chills! Maul and Obi-Wan are finally united in their sense of betrayal from what the Emperor did to them. And Maul dies with confidence that there exists somewhere a child who will restore balance to the Force. This episode ends with Obi-Wan looking out over the large homestead as Aunt Beru calls. Now this would be a few years after Obi-Wan Kenobi's interactions with Owen and Beru in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series on Disney+. And Luke, I think, would actually be around Ezra's age here. They actually used one of Ezra's character models for the animation of Luke running. Okay, on to the two-part finale. Episodes 21 and 22, 0 Hour, parts 1 and 2. The rebels plan their attack on the Imperial factory on Lothal, but Thrawn catches Kallus giving a Fulcrum message, and Thrawn triangulates the vectors of this message to find the planet.
Such as a system which does not appear on Imperial charts, but is represented in the art of the ancient people of this sector. I believe they call this Atolon.
The ancient people of this sector. This could connect with the ancient star map that Morgan Elspeth is using on Ahsoka to find her way to Thrawn, which I have theorized could be based on the ancient Rakatan Empire seen in the Knights of the Old Republic games. This could explain why the home of Bendu is a place older than what is known to the Jedi or the Sith. And I just love that all season long we have had this arc for Thrawn to study each puzzle piece of art and history, and finally, by patiently allowing Kallus to do his thing, he got the answer he needed. This is the clever villainy Star Wars needs more of, and it's the reason we're so excited to see Thrawn in live action. Please don't mess this up, Ahsoka. In this episode, there is an incredible space battle. The Imperial Interdictor comes back, pulling out any escaping ships back out of hyperspace, but Commander Sato sacrifices himself. Thrawn only loses his position this episode because Constantine defies his order so that he can get glory. Really, Thrawn doesn't make any mistakes this episode. That's what makes him so scary. Kanan rallies Bendu to join the fight, calling him a coward.
Perhaps it is the will of the Force that the Jedi and all your kind perish, and I serve the will of the Force!
You know what? He ain't wrong. Thrawn bombards the chopper base, protected by Rex and Zeb's shield at first, but Thrawn ceases fire. Meanwhile, Hera calls Kanan.
Now please, come home, love.
Yeah, as the series goes on, we do start to get more and more affectionate moments between these two. Ezra heads to Cronus to recruit Sabine, and we see Tristan in this moment has an orange marking on his shoulder pauldron, so Sabine has clearly started decorating her brother's armor. She's kind of like Harold with a purple crayon. She's great. So Thrawn leads with a ground invasion now, wearing his goofy ground invasion hat, and he lands with some Imperial Death Troopers. We actually saw these troopers with Krennic in Rogue One, so Thrawn surrounds them, but Bendu Mufasa's in the sky with a lightning storm, and if you look closely, as they all escape, he takes out some AT-ATs, AT-ATs, walkers, whatever you want to call them, but also takes out some Y-Wings. So Bendu was not kidding about not picking a side here, and he really just wants these Warren kids off his damn lawn. Ezra and Sabine's group disables the interdictor, and Kallus gets away in an escape pod. The rebels escape right past Governor Price. Not a good look for her. They all regroup on Yavin 4. This is the final episode to take place in the year 2 BBY, meaning with season 4, we will be entering the final year before the Battle of Yavin. But I will leave you here. This is perhaps the most cryptic moment of the season, and a super important moment between Bendu and Thrawn.
You cannot see, but I can.
What do you see?
I see your defeat, like many arms surrounding you in a cold embrace.
Whoa! Now, we could read this as what happens in the season 4 finale. Thrawn is caught in the cold embrace of the many arms of the Purrgil, zipping him off into hyperspace. But was that truly his defeat? Because Thrawn is still alive in Ahsoka. But it's important to note that Bendu does not say death here, he says defeat. Still, Thrawn's death, whenever it comes, hopefully sometime beyond Ahsoka, because I don't want him to die in this series, his death, his inevitable death, may circle back to this premonition to show Thrawn dying surrounded by some different arms. Maybe his acolytes all dogpiling on him and strangling him. Thrawn's survival from the Purrgil may give him a false confidence that he thinks he already cheated death, according to what Bendu predicted, making the guy think he's immortal. But you know what? Pride goeth before the fall. Okay, here we go. Episodes 1 and 2, Heroes of Mandalore. On the planet of Mandalore, Sabine leads her clan Ren on a rescue mission for her father. Empire loyal Mandalorians are led by Tiber Saxon, brother to Gar Saxon. So this final season opens with the rebels retaking one of their home worlds, Mandalore, and it ends with a sort of liberation of Lothal, Ezra's home, making this whole season a full homecoming. Sabine has a new jetpack with purple wings and still carries a darksaber after season 3 episode 11 Visions of Voices saw her possessed by a Night Sister ghost on Dathomir and take it from Maul's temple, and Kanan trained her with this saber in Trials of the Darksaber, but it does remain a cursed artifact that she doesn't really want. Sabine is saved by Bo-Katan Kryze. Katie Sackhoff is returning from Clone Wars, but she also doesn't want the darksaber initially. Ezra's uncertain jetpack flight this episode is modeled on art for the Rocketeer, directed by Joe Johnston, who did the original jetpack designs for Boba Fett. These rebels learned that war with the Empire has erased their want for leadership even.
Once upon a time, these plains were covered with grass.
And it never grew back?
Never had a chance to. This is what continuous war has done to my home.
Mandalore was initially scorched after an ancient war with the Jedi, but further fusion bombs by Moff Gideon that will take place after this will turn this surface into rocky glass. We'll see this in The Mandalorian Season 3. Yet, vegetation will begin to grow in caves and a mythosaur will appear in the living waters. But again, this is set before those bombings happen. The Mandalorian capital city of Sundari is still standing. Its domed appearance actually came from the design development for Clone Wars. George Lucas suggested to use a trackball mouse as a starting point. Andrew Kishino voices Captain Hark after being the original voice of Saw Gerrera in Clone Wars. Saw Gerrera in this show is voiced by Forrest Whitaker from Rogue One. Their attack on the transport was inspired by the truck chase in Raiders of the Lost Ark and the tank chase in The Last Crusade. Sabine uses purple paint to blind the driver. The power of art in action. Later on this season, they'll use spray paint to get the upper hand on Rook, the assassin. And this artistic flair is something that Sabine actually gets from her father, Ulrich.
Your design aesthetic is still derivative of the pre-exile masters.
Tojin was an influence, obviously, but I made it my own.
Ursa and Tristan's group gets wiped out by a laser that vaporizes wearers of Beskar armor, something that Sabine, we learned, designed during her time with the Empire. They call this weapon the Duchess, after Bo-Katan's sister, Duchess Satine, which just feels doubly cruel for the Mandalorian people. Even Thrawn seems uncertain about conquering Mandalorians with such cruelty, showing that he understands the importance of respecting ancestral heritage. This is the first time the Mandalorian armor is referred to as Beskar in canon. It was first mentioned in Star Wars Republic Commando Hard Contact. The original idea for the episode actually was to have Sabine knight her Mandalorians with the darksaber, leaving scorches on their armor. So really the darksaber for her is more of a paintbrush than it is a weapon. Sabine hands off the darksaber to Bo-Katan Kryze in this episode, and Bo-Katan uses it to unite all the Mandalorian factions.
I accept this sword for my sister, for my clan, and for all of Mandalore.
But But Sabine says that the saber came to her so that she could pass it to Bo-Katan, and I look at that the way diseases work, viruses, curses. These things exist so that the host can transmit them as far as possible. All right, episodes 3 and 4, In the Name of Rebellion. We see the Yavin 4 base in the Massassi Temple, which of course was first seen in matte paintings in the original 1977 Star Wars. This is Chopper's first time here, ahead of his live-action cameo in Rogue One, when the Ghost Crew will actually join the Battle of Scarif. Saw Gerrera appears, the rebel extremist, matching his appearance in Rogue One when his gray hair has grown in, yet he still has his legs these episodes, so those injuries, plus the breathing apparatus he'll need to use, those happen after this. His massive hollow projection literally talks down to Mon Mothma, but she stands her ground and snaps.
If we degrade ourselves to the Empire's level, what will we become?
This line mirrors what Saw Gerrera will tell Jyn Erso in Rogue One.
What will you become?
Saw's U-Wing arrives to help. It is the same black and white partisan markings that we see it have on Jedha in Rogue One. They find a group of engineers from Coruscant being shipped to Jedha and a giant Kyber crystal, referring to the collaborators of Galen Erso that were shipped from Coruscant to Idu in Rogue One, and the crystal being what the Empire wanted to use to power the Death Star super laser. Ezra senses this at first by hearing the crystal as a song, which I believe links his Force abilities with the song of the Purgle hyperspace whales. The crystal explodes, releasing a green shockwave, evoking the detonation of the Star Wars super laser, like we saw Kyber crystals exploding in season 1, episode 6. All right, episode 5, The Occupation. Sabine has now updated her look with darker hair that she keeps for the rest of the season until the epilogue. Mon Mothma calls the planet Lothal, and I just really appreciate how Filoni does this, even though it's Lothal, just recalling the planet's pronunciation from the series pilot episode, and kind of like mixing up calling AT-ATs, AT-ATs, and walkers. He just kind of makes room for everyone's pronunciation and shuts down those gatekeepers who like to actually people in the comments. That said, Purgle is singular and plural. You don't say Purgles. That's just basic human decency. Okay, Vizago returns, getting traded some puffer pigs, returning from season 1, with some piglet versions. These designs were made for the season 1 Lando episode, but scrapped in that episode. They come back here, they're a lot of fun. Lothal's ecology, we learn, has been scorched. Its grasslands have been wiped out, echoing Sabine's lament over Mandalore's ecological transformation. Thank God we do see a stray Locat in an alley. Also some wanted posters of the Spectres lining the walls, using their photos from their season 1 and 2 appearances. This is when they were outed. At the old Joe's bar from Empire Day, the bartender is now Imperial pilot Valen Ruder, returning from season 1 when he was given the parade armors. The HoloNet screen ticker in Orbish reads farewell, and then 2-1, Chloe, Dirkness, Elicious, and Sammy have left the building. Must be some kind of in-joke with the animators. Jai Kel returns, calling Ezra Oleg, which was the name of the loyal Imperial cadet who nearly spoiled Ezra's undercover mission in the Breaking Ranks episode. Jai Kel, now on Ahsoka, serves as a senator on Lothal with Governor Ryder Azadi. Episode 6, Flight of the Defender. 3 adorable Loth cats hop up next to Ezra, and he cannot help but smile at these Celestials' gifts from Mortis, giving them well-deserved scratchy scratches. Now, the sound of the cats are actually recordings from sound designer David Accord's cat, Tex. They see the new TIE Defender, which was given a new color scheme, a reshaped rear engine, a hyperdrive unit, and the wings now actually pop off in the style of the Kenner TIE Fighter toys. Thrawn arrives to inspect these, and Ezra sees on the hill his first Loth wolf. And there's an animated dolly zoom on Ezra in this moment because these are extremely important. We actually saw depictions of Loth wolves in the Lothal Jedi Temple art in season 1 and 2. And Ezra says while they haven't been seen in 100 years, here they are. Ezra follows a white Loth cat to safety, kind of like the White Rabbit from Alice in Wonderland, as Ezra's journey with the animals of Lothal does take him through a looking glass. A larger Loth wolf greets Ezra and takes him to safety.
I don't understand. Why did you help us?
Now, at first we think it's Doom, D-O-O-M, but it's actually Doom, D-U-M-E, as in Caleb Doom, Kanan Jarrus' original name, but both homophones right now leave us with an ominous feeling. Episode 7, Kindred. Thrawn dispatches an assassin named Rook. You'll remember the word Rook as the shutdown command for Thrawn's droids in season 3, but the character of Rook was Thrawn's bodyguard in Timothy Zahn's 1991 Heir to the Empire, who eventually turned on Thrawn and assassinated him, but not here. Now, Timothy Zahn wanted Rook's species to be called Sith to justify Darth Vader's title of Lord of the Sith, but later Lucasfilm would establish the Sith as a dark side cult opposed to the Jedi. So instead, he's called a Nogri, and the Nogri skull does sort of resemble the helmet of Darth Vader. Here, he's voiced by longtime Lucasfilm actor Warwick Davis. Loth wolves lead them into caves, and Sabine sees these cave drawings of the Loth wolves as constellations, like the Path to Peridia closing credits in Ahsoka, which I translated every single rune in another video. Definitely go watch that. It's gonna be one of the most useful videos you can watch for Ahsoka. The Loth wolves then lead them in the this Force-imbued path? Now we'll see more of this realm later, but remember, back in Season 2, Episode 1, Minister Tua, before her death, hinted at a real reason the Empire was interested in Lothal, and this is it, folks. But even more interestingly, cave paintings depict Jedi descending from space. One of these is a tall, pointy head, likely Ki-Adi-Mundi. We also see Yoda with his lightsaber on his hilt. Not just the Yoda species, this is a Jedi Yoda. And then a third figure, a human beside them. I assume this is Mace Windu. And then a Jedi child hovers over them. So the assumption since then has been that this depicts these three Jedi bringing a young Caleb Doom to the Lothal Jedi Temple as a youngling, and that is how he got the name Doom. But because these cave drawings are thousands of years old, this would have been something that was predicted thousands of years prior. The whole idea of this episode is Kanan and Ezra are kindred through the Force, connected to Lothal through the threads of fate. Episode 8, Crawler Commandeers. Mining Guild ore crawlers burn up the Lothal grasslands. Now these designs came from the World Devastators. These were flying automated factories from 1991 Legends comic series Dark Empire. Captain Seaver listens to the same music that Zeb listens to back in the Season 2 episode, The Mystery of Chopper Base. The slave master that Zeb fights is named Approach, a nod to Pat Roach, the stunt actor who fought Indiana Jones in the first 3 Indy movies, though his scene was removed from Last Crusade. And then after decoding the schematics to the TIE Defender Elite, Hera pushes the rebels to strike their Imperial factory on Lothal. Big mistake. Episode 9, Rebel Assault. Mart Matten from the Iron Squadron episode returns as a pilot in Hera's group, and on his helmet is Sammy and Aurebesh. These X-Wings you'll notice are painted green, but they're not part of the Green Squadron, they're just part of Hera's Phoenix Squadron here. But other than a more recent appearance of an X-Wing in Andor Season 1, this I think would be the earliest chronological appearance of X-Wings, ahead of their use in the Battle of Scarif in Rogue One and the Battle of Yavin in A New Hope. Their build is slightly tweaked to match the proportions of the 1978 toy, but the TIE Defender Elites just wipe out these X-Wings. Had this TIE Defender program been expanded, there would just be no way the Rebels would have made it through the Death Star trench run, and the Empire would not have lost the Galactic Civil War. Episode 10, Jedi Knight. Opens with Price torturing Hera, and Thrawn brings back in Hera's Kalikori and singles out a single bead for a brother who died in the past. As Ezra senses from the tower for Hera, we see some Loth bats, which flew to the city from the Empire's ecological destruction, so they kind of made a mistake there, because it creates an opening for the Rebels to sneak in with these gliders. Kanan uses a knife to cut his hair, a ritual that we see Sabine Wren do in Ahsoka. Tarkin tells Thrawn,
"Your TIE Defender program is at risk. Orson Krennic has been quite persuasive about diverting the funding to his own project, Stardust."
Now, of course, he's referring to Krennic's Death Star project. So again, it's the quick fix of the Death Star that defunded the harder to eradicate offensive hardware that the Empire would have been invincible with, the TIE Defenders. I also like this detail because it's clear that Tarkin initially was super skeptical of Project Stardust, but as soon as it was effective, he took all the credit for it away from Krennic. Hera says,
"I have to tell you something. I hate your hair."
Now, we've already seen them kiss, so yeah, I don't think she just wants to say I love you. I think another Kalikori bead is on the way here. They fly down to pick up Kanan and Hera, but Price uses a walker to fire on the fuel pod, and Kanan uses the Force to repel the flames, his other hand to push back Hera to the ship. No words are exchanged here, just observe and weep. Interesting how Kanan's force projection is tinted blue, like his lightsaber. And it's pretty rare to see a manipulation of heat and energy and chemical reactions like this. It's not common to see this in Star Wars. Kylo Ren did suspend a blaster bolt in The Force Awakens, and of course, Grogu pulled off a very similar move in the Mandalorian Season 3 finale. We are left this episode in heartbreak. The closing title is rendered in bleak, charred ash. Episode 11, Doom. As Hera mourns, Chopper holds her hand, just like he did to Kanan when Kanan was first blinded in the Season 2 finale. Ezra meets the Doom Wolf, which has on its head the same symbol that Kanan had on his shoulder armor. In the credits of the episode, Dave Filoni credited the voice of the Doom Wolf as played by, quote, the Force. But it does kind of sound like Freddie Prinze Jr., as the wolf is kind of an embodiment of the Force through Kanan's essence.
Restore. Past. Redeem. Future.
The wolves give Ezra this stone with 3 hands, one closed, one firm and open, another relaxed and open. This stone will show up actually in Luthen Rael's shop in Andor, and we will see the stone's importance in episode 12, Wolves in a Door. They ride a pack of Loth wolves to the Lothal Jedi Temple, and as they descend into the tall grass, Hera experiences some flashbacks to major Kanan Jarrus moments from throughout the series, with lines from Spark of Rebellion, Path of the Jedi, Vision of Hope, Fire Across the Galaxy, and Siege of Lothal. They also use a recording of Thrawn from the Season 3 finale finale 0 Hour to distract the scout troopers and steal their helmets. Helmets that we might see in the back of Sabine's room in Ahsoka. We meet Varys Hayden, voiced by Malcolm McDowell, an advisor to Palpatine and a scholar of the Jedi and Sith lore, a part originally meant to be served by Von A, Vader's assistant in Rogue One, but here Hayden speaks with Palpatine, who of course is voiced by Ian McDiarmid.
The symbols and iconography are reminiscent of a report I discovered in the Jedi archives.
The Mortis Gods.
Woo, okay, the Mortis Gods. I think we might have do a whole other video just on the Mortis arc, but I'm gonna give you a quick recap here. The Mortis Gods are from the Clone Wars arc in season 3, episodes 15, 16, and 17. They are the father, the daughter, and the son, and yes, they are essentially the holy trinity of the Star Wars universe. Technically, they are considered celestials in Star Wars lore. Yes, there are celestials in Marvel, but there are also celestials in Star Wars. The son represents the dark side of the Force, the daughter represents the light side of the Force, and the father represents the balance between. So in this arc, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and Anakin end up in the realm of Mortis, and they find these three figures. The father actually tells Anakin to stay with them in Mortis because he is the chosen one. The son takes Ahsoka captive to try to force Anakin to join him in overpowering the father and the daughter. A lot of shit goes down, but when the son is about to kill the father, the daughter sacrifices herself to save the father and transfers her life force to Ahsoka. And this connection is represented from here forward in the form of Ahsoka's bird, Morai. Next, the son shows Anakin future visions of himself as Vader, and Anakin, freaked out about what might come next, decides to join the son briefly, but the father ends up erasing Anakin's memory and kills himself with a sword to take his son's power away, allowing Anakin to kill the son. It is crazy. Just watch these 3 episodes, you'll see what I mean. So Ezra and Sabine recognize the 3 hands from the stone, the fist for the son, firm hand for the father, and the relaxed hand for the daughter. Sabine makes the connection of the 3 hands just as she makes the connection with the 3 faces of the Night Sister star map in Ahsoka. Here she says,
"The painting on the temple is like a star map, but none that I'm familiar with. Those lines are like paths, and the rings are planets, or doorways."
The lines are like paths, and the rings are planets or doorways. We see the same thing in the Path to Peridia star map in Ahsoka, especially in the closing credits. The golden line represents the path, and the golden rings represent planets. Again, watch that video where I break down all the runes and what all those planets mean. Ezra places his hand on the relaxed daughter hand, and the ring lights up, and the doorway reconfigures, and Ezra follows the Loth Wolves as they walk in a ring forming a portal, bringing us to episode 13, A World Between Worlds. I'm telling you, it is the most important episode of this series. Throughout this episode, we hear famous lines from Star Wars history. First, Yoda. This is from Attack of the Clones.
Truly wonderful the mind of a child is.
Yoda speaking to Obi-Wan in the Jedi Temple when they were looking for Kamino on the star map.
Truly wonderful the mind of a child is.
I think we lead with this because Yoda is respecting how wonderful Ezra's young mind is for discovering this. Next, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon from Clone Wars, part of the Mortis arc Overlords.
What is this place?
A conduit through which the entire force of the universe flows.
What is this place?
Unlike any other, a conduit through which the entire force of the universe flows.
What Qui-Gon described then is what we are seeing now. Next, Yoda in Empire Strikes Back, which happens after this.
Luminous beings so we, not this crude matter. Luminous beings so we, not this crude matter.
He's speaking to Luke in this moment, a way of saying we are beings made of light and the Force. We are not just blood, bone, and muscle. Next, Ahsoka in season 2 of Rebels.
Just when you think you understand the Force, you find out how little you actually know.
Spoken to Ezra, and now we are seeing that the Force is far more complex than any of us thought. Next, Yoda in Revenge of the Sith.
Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose.
Now, very important advice for Ezra in this realm. Next, Obi-Wan in the season 3 episode, Twin Sons.
What you need, you already have. Unfortunately, you seem to be letting it all go. What you need, you already have. Unfortunately, you seem to be letting it all go.
Which Old Ben said to Ezra and also seems to respond to Yoda's previous line. Next, Kanan in Rebels.
I won't let him lose his way. Not like I did. I won't let him lose his way. Not like I did.
Showing how Kanan's guidance is still with Ezra even now. Okay, so Ezra walks through the world between worlds. This is a realm in which the Force connects all of time and space. And next we hear a very important line.
The Force is what gives the Jedi its power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, it penetrates us, it binds the galaxy together.
This is, of course, Alec Guinness Obi-Wan in A New Hope, a conversation with Luke that has not happened yet.
The Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together.
Now, more come a bit later. They're all kind of mixed together.
Master Yoda? Obi-Wan? Where are you?
So you heard 3 there. There was Yoda in Revenge of the Sith.
Rejoice for those around you who transform into the Force.
There was Maz Kanata to Rey in The Force Awakens, way in the future from now.
I see your eyes. You already know the truth.
And Chirrut Imwe in Rogue One.
The Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
And then right after this, we actually hear Jyn Erso from Rogue One.
The time to fight is now!
And then the voice of Kylo Ren from The Force Awakens.
Show me.
Interspersed with Rey whispering in The Force Awakens.
We'll see each other again.
And then some words from the father to Anakin in the Mortis episode of Overlords.
And now you see who you truly are.
Then Poe Dameron whispering from The Force Awakens.
The Resistance will not be intimidated by you.
Then the dying words of the daughter and altar of Mortis.
It is his nature.
Then Maz Kanata again for The Force Awakens.
The belonging you seek is not behind you.
And then Leia in A New Hope.
This is our most desperate hour. This is our most desperate hour.
Then Yoda in Revenge of the Sith.
The shadow of greed, that is.
And then Leia finishing her line from A New Hope.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
And then Anakin in Clone Wars telling Ahsoka.
You never would have made it as Obi-Wan's Padawan.
So Ezra finds the Morai bird, taking Ezra to a portal through time back to Ahsoka's duel with Vader on Malachor in the Rebels Season 2 finale. We never saw exactly how that duel ended, and now we see what happened. Vader is just about to kill her, but Ezra pulls her out of time. Ezra, up until this moment, had thought Ahsoka was dead. So he thought in this moment he changed history to save her, not realizing that she was always alive. So he mistakenly runs away from Ahsoka to try to find Kanan. And we actually hear some voices from Kanan, like here.
I'm about to let everyone know the secret.
This was the moment he revealed himself as a Jedi in the Season 1 early episodes.
Kid, I'm about to let everyone in on the secret.
Then a line overheard by Ezra from Kanan to Hera in the Season 2 premiere.
I survived one war. I'm not ready for another one. I survived one war. I'm not ready for another one.
Then Kanan in the Season 3 episode about Rex's Clone Wars memories.
Battles leave scars. Some you can't see. Battles leave scars. Some you can't see.
And I love that we hear this line here because battles leaving scars is evidence that those battles happened, that you can't change history to erase the scar, you have to keep the scar with you. And sometimes you can't see it, it's just something you have to carry with you. That is the point of life experience, and we cannot erase or evade or sidestep that life experience. But Ezra returns to the moment of Kanan's death on the fuel depot, and Ahsoka says that Kanan needed to die so that the others could live. Then the Emperor calls out to them.
Ezra Bridger and Ashoka Tano, mine at last.
Now, this blue flame on the pedestal appeared in Clone Wars Season 6 when Yoda went to Moraban and the Emperor tried to corrupt his mind through his connection with Count Dooku. It's just super creepy that the Emperor can see through time this way, using his Sith sorcery. The Emperor says,
Show me the way, Ezra. Help me.
The way Ian McDiarmid says, help me, recalls how he said it to Anakin after Mace Windu scarred him in Revenge of the Sith. Help me. So Ahsoka ends up going back through her portal to the aftermath of her duel with Vader in the Season 2 finale when she limped out of that Sith temple on Malachor with Morai. This is actually the episode we learn Morai's name, and in Greek mythology, the Morai, spelled differently, were the name of the three fates. Ezra presses his hand against the fist of the sun, and we hear some of his words from the Mortis arc in Clone Wars, and Ezra passes out and the temple collapses. Now, Filoni has said that he doesn't think of the world between worlds as time travel, that instead it's about gaining knowledge of the future, and as the Doom Wolf says, restore the past, redeem the future. So again, Ezra has already changed the past. That is how Ahsoka was already alive. So in a sense, he just kind of closed the loop. He restored the past. And by learning to move on from Kanan Jarrus' death, he has redeemed the future and learned a lesson about sacrifice to save your friends. That said, the Ahsoka series, at least now, seems to be flirting with the idea of calling to people through time and referencing the Loth Wolves and the Gods of Mortis. So the World Between Worlds episode is essential watching. All right, episode 14, A Fool's Hope, Hera, Rex, and Kallus recruit Hondo, Gregor, and Wolf, and Ketsu from Selos. Ryder pretends to betray the rebels to Price, who attacks their cave dwelling, but it was Ryder's ruse to lure Price out of her protection of the capital, and Ezra gets back up from the Loth Wolves. It kind of recalls the large Fernok that appeared behind Ezra in the season 1 episode on Anaxis, but now Ezra is fully in control, which brings us to the finale. Episodes 15 and 16, Family Reunion and Farewell. This episode actually begins as kind of a hoped-for family reunion between Ezra and his parents, showing a point of vulnerability for Ezra that we'll see later in this 2-part finale. The rebels use Price to infiltrate the Imperial base on Lothal, and Ryder Azadi pulls an Ezra to impersonate Admiral Yularen to order Protocol 13 to evac the base, but Rook has alerted Thrawn, who arrives in the Chimera. The shield generator has capacitors that look like the design in the Endor bunker in Return of the Jedi, which are actually just stacked cups. That was what provided the shield for the Death Star 2 while it was under construction. Thrawn begins blasting civilian sections of Lothal, and Ezra confronts Thrawn alone and leaves his lightsaber behind with Chopper, and Sabine gives Ezra a knowing look while she distracts the others to let him go. You gotta imagine she carries a bit of guilt with her. In Thrawn's quarters, he is framed perfectly between the Isalamiri, the lizards from Heir to the Empire, which are Force immune, which is just kind of ironic that he has these 2 Force immune creatures that are on either side of him when he is not immune to the forces of nature. You also notice he still has his Jedi guard mask on his desk. Thrawn and Palpatine, we learn, have removed parts of the Lothal Jedi Temple to the Chimera, and inside, Ezra sees his mother calling to him just as Aunt Beru called to Luke and twin sons. Thrawn and Palpatine are essentially doing good cop, bad cop, and Palpatine says,
"You know it is possible to change fate."
Palpatine knows Ezra knows it's possible because he saw him in the World Between Worlds. As Ezra destroys the temple, he sprints through Palpatine's hollow projection as it flickers into his true form of Darth Sidious, and we hear the Emperor's theme. Hera and the others get the Lothal shield back online, and the Ghost arrives with a vast pod of Purrgil, returning from season 2, episode 15, The Call, and now they are responding to the call from Ezra. They wipe out the fleet, tentacles smashing through the windows and wrapping around Thrawn, charging up to jump into hyperspace.
It's up to all of you now.
And remember, the Force will be with you, always.
In this way, we come full circle with Bendu's prediction of Thrawn's defeat in the season 3 finale.
What do you see? I see your defeat, like many arms surrounding you in a cold embrace.
But is Thrawn truly defeated? The Ahsoka series explores how Thrawn and Ezra follow these Purrgil on the path to Peridea, and Thrawn's fate of many arms surrounding him in a cold embrace may take on yet another meaning at some point in the future. Let's also not forget the evolutionary link between wolves and whales. The reason whales are sea mammals is that in the distant past, there was a wolf ancestor who lived close to water and lived more and more of its life swimming, eventually evolving into whales. They have a common ancestry. Like Ezra and Kanan, they are kindred. So the rebels launch and blow up the base. They play a holo recording from Ezra.
I couldn't have wished for a better family. I can't wait to come home.
Now, we learn in Ahsoka that Ezra recorded a longer personal recording just for Sabine, where it sounded like he actually intended to disappear. How much time did he have to record stuff? So then we jump to an epilogue that takes place after the Battle of Endor, after Return of the Jedi, and mirroring the opening shot of the series, Sabine now leans on the railing of the Lothal comms tower looking out over the city, but instead of a Star Destroyer over her head, it's Ahsoka's T6 shuttle and X-Wings, a storyboard that Dave Filoni also reused for Ahsoka Episode 1. Sabine has cut her hair even shorter, and now her armor bears a pauldron with a Purrgil on it. We find out Zeb has taken Kallus to Lyra San to prove that the Lasat species was not extinct. We learn that Hera fought in the Battle of Endor, Rex fought in the Battle of Endor too, and now she has a son, Jason Syndulla, Kanan's son, Spectre 7. Also similar framing to the shots of Ahsoka Episode 2, but I much prefer this version. Ahsoka wears white robes and carries a staff, which Dave Filoni intended to look like Gandalf the White, the incomplete mentor, returning as someone who is further down the path of enlightenment. The two go off in search of Ezra Bridger, and end of series. Ahsoka begins with them on the other side of that search, Master and Apprentice apparently having failed to connect. But you know what? On its own, this Rebels finale is perfect. It brings to an end all of these characters' arcs in such a great way, and you can tell Dave Filoni really wanted to stick that landing, considering initially Clone Wars ended in kind of this open-ended state. Okay, that was the 4 seasons of Star Wars Rebels. Now, if you only have time to watch about 1 season's worth of episodes, like 23 episodes, here are the most important important episodes to watch season by season. Okay, for season 1, episode 1 and episode 2, Spark of the Rebellion, part 1 and 2. Season 1, episode 5, Rise of the Old Masters. Season 1, episode 10, Path of the Jedi. Season 1, episode 15, that season finale, Fire Across the Galaxy. Season 2, episode 11, Legacy. Season 2, episode 18, Shroud of Darkness. And season 2, episodes 21 and 22, the finale of that season, Twilight of the Apprentice, part 1 and 2. Season 3, episode 1 and 2, Steps into Shadow, part 1 and 2. Season 3, episode 11, Visions and Voices. Season 3, episode 15, Trials of the Darksaber. Season 3, episode 20, Twin Suns. And the finale episode, season 3, episode 21 and 22, 0 Hour, part 1 and 2. And then season 4, episode 7, Kindred. Season 4, episode 10, Jedi Knight. Season 4, episode 11, Doom. Season 4, episode 12, Wolves in a Door. Season 4, episode 13, A World Between Worlds. And season 4, episode 15 and 16, the series finales, Family Reunion, and Farewell, parts 1 and 2. So 23 episodes. Yeah, I left out some, but this, I think, are the must-watches. Okay, and from these, to really narrow it down for you, here are what I think are the top 5 episodes of Rebels, at least my favorites. Number 5, A World Between Worlds, obviously very important. Episode 4, Visions and Voices, which is such an important Maul and Darksaber episode, and Night Sister episode. Episode 3, Twin Suns, which is really just great for the Maul Kenobi moment. Episode 2, Trials of the Darksaber, I think the most important episode to watch for any season of The Mandalorian. And episode 1, by far the best arc of the Rebels series, the season 2 finale, Twilight of the Apprentice, parts 1 and 2. I hope you enjoyed this Rebels breakdown compilation. Please support our channel by grabbing some merch at nerdriot.shop. Subscribe to all 3 channels of the New Rockstars Network. You can follow me at EA Voss, follow New Rockstars. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.